Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight our chronicle covers the thunderous echoes of the Thu'um, exploring the hidden mechanics and forgotten secrets of the dragon tongue. We are stepping into the boots of the Kyne, feeling the frost bite at our cheeks and the ancient words vibrate in our very bones. We are going to look at the shouts you thought you knew and uncover the chaotic, broken and sometimes hilarious things they can actually do when you push the magic system to its breaking point. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to the Cloud District, assuming you get there often, of course, without tripping over a sweet roll or getting shaken down by the guards. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the realm. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind howls across the throat of the world, carrying with it the scent of pine and ancient stone. The Dragonborn stands at the edge of a precipice, the world of Skyrim spread out below like a map drawn on parchment. Here, the air is thin and silence is heavy, waiting to be broken. The first lesson every Dragonborn learns isn't about fire or ice, it's about force, unrelenting force. To the uninitiated, it is simply a push, a telekinetic shove that staggers an opponent. But to those who have truly mastered the way of the voice, and perhaps more importantly, the physics engine that governs this reality, Unrelenting Force, is not merely a weapon. It is a declaration that gravity is merely a suggestion. When you first delve into the dusty, cobwebbed depths of Bleakfall's Barrow, seeking the Dragonstone for the Jarl's Court Wizard, you encounter a word wall. The chanting rises, the screen darkens, and you absorb the concept of fus, force. It seems humble enough. A small stagger, a brief interruption. But once you have climbed the 7,000 steps, ignoring the frost trolls who seem personally offended by your existence, and receive the full knowledge from the Greybeards, the shout evolves. Fus Roda, 3 words that define the combat experience of the Fourth Era. The true utility of Unrelenting Force lies not in the damage it deals, which is actually quite negligible in the grand scheme of things. A steel sword or a well-placed fireball will always outpace the raw damage of the shout itself. No, the true power is the kinetic energy it imparts. We have all been there, standing on the rope bridge near Valtheim Towers, watching a bandit chief charge forward with a warhammer raised high, screaming about how he's going to make a rug out of your hide. You don't draw a weapon, you simply speak. The bandit is suddenly no longer a threat. He is a projectile. He is launched backward with such violent velocity that he clears the railing, hangs in the air for a comical second like a cartoon coyote, and then plummets into the white river below. This interaction reveals a core in-game fact that defines the Skyrim experience. Unrelenting Force is the ultimate crowd control because it interacts with the ragdoll state of enemies. When an NPC is hit by the full 3-word shout, their animation skeleton goes limp. They cease to be a combatant and become a physics object, subject to momentum and collisions. This is why you can clear a crowded dinner table in Dragon's Reach with a single whisper, sending goblets, plates, and Jarl Bolgruf's children flying into the fire pit. It is an expression of chaos that bypasses armor rating and blocking stances. A shield cannot block a shout that turns the very air into a battering ram. But let's dig a little deeper into the lore that surrounds this power. There is a fascinating disconnect between what we see in the game and what the history books tell us. Consider the death of High King Torrig. When you speak to the Solitude Guards or listen to the rumours in the Winking Skeever, you hear that Ulfric Stormcloak shouted the king to pieces, ripped him apart, they say. Yet, when we use the shout, people just fly backward. They don't explode. This has led to a long-standing community debate. Was Ulfric's shout truly that powerful, or is it poetic exaggeration by a terrified court? Some fans theorise that the in-game version of Unrelenting Force is a diluted mechanic for balance purposes, while the canon Dragonborn and powerful tongues like Ulfric can indeed shatter bones and rupture organs with sound alone. Others suggest that Ulfric shouted Torrig down, then finished him with a sword, and the legend simply grew in the telling. However, if we look at the obscure lore surrounding the greatest masters of the voice, the destructive potential is undeniable. Deep in the text regarding the First Council, there are mentions of tongues who could siege city walls with their voices. But the most telling piece of obscure lore comes from the story of Jurgen Windcaller, the founder of the Greybeards. It is said that at the Battle of Red Mountain, the tongues were devastating, but Jurgen realised their power was being misused. When he meditated and discovered the way of the voice, he returned to face 17 other tongues. Lore states that he swallowed the shouts of these 17 powerful masters for 3 days until they collapsed from exhaustion. This suggests that a true master of the voice can not only project force but nullify it, absorbing the kinetic energy of sound into themselves. The Dragonborn in their journey only scratches the surface of this metaphysical manipulation. Returning to the practical, albeit slightly glitchy application of the shout, we find one of the most entertaining hidden uses, the reset button. Skyrim is a world of cluttered geometry. Sometimes a follower, let's say Lydia, sworn to carry your burdens, decides to stand in a doorway. She looks at you with that blank, devoted stare, refusing to move, trapping you in a small bedroom while you try to loot a chest. You can try sprinting into her, you can try sheathing and unsheathing your weapon, but often she is an immovable object. Unrelenting Force solves this social awkwardness instantly. A quick shout sends her tumbling across the room. She might complain, claiming, "I am on your side," as she picks herself up from a pile of overturned chairs, but the doorway is clear. The shout is a universal key for stuck NPCs, glitching livestock, and even horses that have decided to park themselves on top of a tent. Furthermore, Unrelenting Force acts as a crude but effective interrupt for enemy casters. We've all faced the terror of a high-level pyromancer winding up a spell that takes half the screen to display. The fireball is glowing, the chanting is reaching a crescendo, and you have 0 stamina left to bash them. The shout is instant. It breaks their concentration, cancels the spell, and buys you those precious few seconds to close the gap or chug a potion that tastes like stale strawberries. There is a rhythm to using it, a satisfying cadence. Fus. Ru. Da. The delay between the words, the intake of breath, the release. It taps into something primal. The game designers understood that sound is as physical as steel. When you shout at a dragon mid-flight and it shudders, forced to acknowledge your presence, you aren't just doing damage. You are asserting dominance in a language that predates the mountains themselves. However, the physics manipulation can backfire. We must acknowledge the chaotic nature of the Havoc engine. Shouting a boss enemy like a dragon priest might seem like a good idea until they clip through a wall and disappear into the void, taking their mask and their loot with them. Or perhaps you shout a gemstone off a pedestal, and it flies with the speed of a bullet into a dark corner never to be seen again. The shout demands respect, not just for its power, but for its capacity to break the world in ways you didn't intend. Think about the sheer volume of air being displaced. If we apply real-world physics to the visual effect of Unrelenting Force, the sudden change in air pressure would likely rupture the eardrums of everyone in a 50-foot radius, including the Dragonborn. The shockwave visible on screen implies a compression of air so dense it refracts light. You aren't just yelling loud, you're creating a localized sonic boom. The fact that your followers don't permanently lose their hearing is a mercy of the game mechanics. As the Dragonborn travels through the holds, this shout becomes a signature. It is the answer to the bandit's taunt, the giant's club, and the bear's roar. But it is also a tool for exploration. Have you ever seen a chest on a ledge just out of reach? A quick shout might knock it down, or shatter it if the game allowed destructible environments. Have you ever tried to play bowling with cabbages in a farmer's cart? Unrelenting Force turns the mundane clutter of Skyrim into a playground. The beauty of this first, most basic shout is that it never becomes obsolete. While you will learn to breathe fire, call lightning and summon dragons, you will always keep Unrelenting Force equipped. It is reliable. It is the old reliable of the Dragonborn's arsenal. It represents the raw, unshaped potential of the protagonist. You are a force of nature, and nature does not ask for permission to move through a space. It simply moves the space out of the way. But what happens when the Dragonborn needs to move not the world, but themselves? What happens when the fall is too deep, the jump too wide, and gravity, the very force you just weaponized, turns against you? As we stand on the high peaks, looking down into the misty valleys of the Reach, or the frozen wastes of Winterhold, we realize that projecting force is only half the equation. Sometimes, to survive the harsh verticality of this province, you must cease to exist, if only for a moment. You must step sideways out of reality, becoming something the ground cannot hurt. If Unrelenting Force is the Dragonborn's hammer, treating every problem like a nail to be pounded into submission, then Become Ethereal is the Dragonborn's ghost story. It is the negation of the physical, a refusal to engage with the brutal reality of Nirn on its own terms. We just discussed how gravity can be weaponized against your enemies, tossing them off bridges and cliffs like ragdolls. But in the vertical landscape of Skyrim, gravity is an equal opportunity killer. It comes for the bandit, it comes for the mammoth, and sooner or later, as you edge your way down a steep mountain slope trying to shortcut the path to Ivarstead, it comes for you. We have all stood there, the throat of the world. You have just finished a deeply philosophical conversation with Paarthurnax, the old Dover contemplating the nature of his own innate evil. The view is breathtaking, clouds drifting below your boots, the auroras shimmering like curtains of magicka in the upper atmosphere. The quest marker tells you to go to Riften, or Solitude, or some damp cave halfway across the map. You look at the winding path down, the 7,000 steps that took forever to climb, populated by that one frost troll who definitely holds a grudge. Then you look at the sheer drop off the side of the mountain. In any other game, jumping would be madness. It would be a game over screen before you hit the tree line. But you are the Dover Kyne. You possess the words Fame Z Gron, Fade, Spirit, Bind. You take a running start. You sprint off the edge of the highest peak in Tamriel. The wind roars in your ears, the grey rock blurs into a streak of vertical, terrifying motion. Fd. Your stomach drops, a sensation the game somehow conveys perfectly through a simple FOV shift. And just as the ground rushes up to meet you looking very hard and very unforgiving, you shout, Fame! The world shifts. The colours drain away, replaced by a spectral, washed-out blue. The roar of the wind becomes muffled, distant, as if heard from underwater. You're no longer flesh and bone. You're a whisper in the shape of a warrior. You hit the ground not with a crunch of broken legs, but with a silent, sliding grace. You don't take damage. You don't stagger. You simply land, an invincible phantom, and continue running as the shout fades and the colour bleeds back into the world. You have just turned a 40-minute trek into a 30-second skydive. This is the core utility of Become Ethereal that veteran players swear by. It essentially turns the entire map into a sandbox of vertical shortcuts. Why navigate the treacherous switchbacks of the Reach when you can just dive bomb into the river below? Why carefully climb down the scaffolding in a dwarven ruin when you can drop down the central shaft like a stone? It transforms navigation from a traversal puzzle into a point A to point B straight line. But beyond the thrill of base jumping without a parachute, the mechanics of this shout interact with the game world in ways that border on cheating. When you are ethereal, you are technically removed from the combat equation. Enemies can see you, they can hate you, but they cannot touch you. A Draugr Deathlord's ebony axe swings harmlessly through your torso. A dragon's fire breath washes over you like warm water, doing absolutely nothing to your health bar. This leads to the emergency button tactic. In the higher difficulties, legendary mode specifically, Skyrim stops being a power fantasy and starts being a survival horror game where a mudcrab can two-shot you. Here, Become Ethereal is not a luxury, it is life support. When you are cornered, out of stamina, with no magicka for a healing spell, this shout buys you the most valuable currency in combat, time. While ethereal, your stamina regenerates. You can sprint to cover, you can charge up a master level spell that normally takes 3 business days to cast, and because you are invincibility personified, no one can interrupt you. Just as the spell is ready to release, the shout fades, and you unleash hell. There is a fascinating bit of obscure lore hidden in the words themselves. Fame, fade, Z, spirit, Gron, bend. When you learn these words, specifically from the word wall in Ironbind Barrow or Lost Valley Redoubt, you are absorbing a concept that is antithetical to the dragon's nature. Dragons are creatures of domination and presence. They impose their will on reality. To become ethereal is to withdraw one's will, to cease to exist in a tangible form. Paarthurnax, in his meditations, touches on this. He suggests that the shout is a form of understanding the void, that which is not. To shout Fame is to deny the earth bones, the laws of nature established by the Aedra. You're telling the universe, I am not here, and for a few seconds, the universe believes you. This connects to a deeper community discussion regarding the pacifist run. There is a subset of the Skyrim community that attempts to play the game without killing anyone, or at least without registering a kill in their stats menu. Become Ethereal is the cornerstone of this playstyle. It allows a pacifist Dragonborn to walk calmly through a bandit camp, ignoring the swords hacking at their back, grab the quest item, and walk out. It turns the Dragonborn into a ghost haunting the narrative, observing but not interacting violently. It recontextualizes the game from an action RPG into a stealth walker simulator. One of the most specific and memorable applications of this shout occurs at Bard's Leap Summit. This location, hidden in the Reach, features a massive waterfall and a wooden plank diving board, extending over a frighteningly high drop. If you jump from this plank and survive the landing in the pool below, a ghost of a bard named Azadal appears. He plays a song for you, congratulating you on the leap that killed him. Most players strip naked and pray the water physics work correctly to survive the fall, but the savvy Dragonborn just shouts theme, jumps, and lands on the rocks next to the water if they miss, completely unharmed. The ghost appears regardless, perhaps slightly confused that you didn't shatter your spine, but impressed nonetheless. It's a moment where a hidden game mechanic, the scripted event, meets a player-driven exploit, the shout, in perfect harmony. We must also talk about the traps. Skyrim's dungeons are littered with pressure plates, tripwires, swinging blades, and jets of flame. The Dwemer ruins, in particular, are essentially industrial murder factories. Navigating a hallway of swinging guillotines requires timing, most patience, and rhythm. Or you can just shout. Walking through a wall of swinging blades while Ethereal feels incredibly smug. The blades pass through your neck, the pressure plates click but nothing happens, or the poison darts bounce off your spectral skin, and you jog past the danger while your follower, usually distinctively lacking in ethereal powers, gets battered around like a pinball behind you. I'm right behind you, they cry as a spinning blade sends them flying. However, there is a catch, a balance mechanic that keeps this from being true God mode. The moment you take an aggressive action, the ethereal form breaks. You cannot swing a sword or fire an arrow while remaining a ghost. This creates a high-stakes game of chicken. You have to wait until the very last second of the shout's duration to strike, or else you leave yourself vulnerable too early. There is also the matter of the lava swim. In the Dawnguard DLC, specifically during the quest Lost to the Ages, you enter the Ethereum Forge. There are pools of magma here that deal massive damage over time. Normally lava is a do-not-touch zone, but with Become Ethereal, you can literally go for a swim in molten rock. This allows players to find hidden chests or shortcuts, tucked away in areas the developers assumed were inaccessible. It creates a surreal image, the Dragonborn, submerged in liquid fire, swimming with the casual breaststroke of a tourist in a hot spring. Fans have long debated the metaphysical implications of this state. If you are ethereal, are you stepping into the Dreamsleave, the place where souls go when they die? Are you briefly becoming a Daedra of your own making? Some theories suggest that the shout works by shifting the Dragonborn slightly out of sync with time. You aren't transparent, you just aren't in the same now as the sword swinging at you. You're 1 second in the future where the sword has already passed. This aligns with the time-bending nature of other shouts we will discuss later. But perhaps the most hilarious side effect of Become Ethereal involves the AI's reaction to it. Or rather, the lack thereof. Enemies do not understand that you are a ghost. They don't switch tactics. A bandit will continue to power attack you, wasting their stamina on empty air. A giant will stomp the ground, expecting you to launch into orbit, and then stare confusedly when you remain standing there, shimmering and translucent. It exposes the artificiality of the enemies. They are programmed to kill, but they have no programming for target is currently a spooky ghost. There is a serene beauty to this shout that is often overlooked in favour of the flashy fire and lightning options. In a game that is constantly screaming at you, battle music, dragon roars, town guards complaining about arrows in knees, Become Ethereal offers a moment of quiet. The sound design dampens the chaos. For 10, maybe 20 seconds, the world cannot hurt you. You are an observer. You can walk through a blizzard without shivering, stand in a fire without burning, and fall from the heavens without fear. It is the shout of the survivor, the explorer, and the trickster. It reminds us that in a world of swords and sorcery, sometimes the most powerful move is to simply opt out of the physical laws altogether. But as the colour returns to the world and the sounds of combat rush back in, you're reminded that the respite is temporary. You cannot stay a ghost forever. Eventually you must solidify. You must land. And once you have landed safe and sound at the bottom of the mountain while the Greybeards are still meditating on the peak, you might look up at the sky. You've conquered gravity and you've conquered the fall. But there are things up there that are far more terrifying than a long drop. There are things that eat the world. And sometimes, to stop them, you don't need to shout them apart or hide from them. You need to look at the churning apocalyptic clouds they bring with them and tell the sky to shut up. So, you have mastered gravity, tossing bandits off bridges like discarded toys, and you have mastered the art of the spectral plummet, turning fatal drops into casual shortcuts. But eventually you have to look up. Skyrim is a province defined by its sky. Those vast shifting auroras, the oppressive blizzards that blind you in Winterhold, and the persistent soaking rain that makes the Reach feel like a swamp in the sky. Weather in Skyrim isn't just a backdrop, it's a mood, it's a mechanic, and sometimes it's a weapon used by a giant apocalyptic dragon who wants to eat the world. Let's talk about that first fight with Alduin at the throat of the world. You remember it well. Paarthurnax is airborne, snapping and biting at his older brother. The music swells with that chanting choir that makes your hair stand on end. And then, Alduin does something terrifying. He shouts at the sky. The clouds turn a bruised, angry purple. Fireballs, literal meteors, start raining down on the mountaintop. It's chaotic. You're trying to aim your Dragonrend shout. You're dodging explosions that turn the snow into steam. And your screen is shaking so hard it feels like the game engine is about to have a stroke. Most players treat this meteor storm like a standard boss mechanic. Run around, heal, try not to get hit. But the clever Dovahkiin knows a secret. You don't have to endure the storm, you can cancel it. Buried in your shout menu, likely collecting dust after you used it exactly once to get past the wind barrier on the 7,000 steps is clear skies. Loch Vakur, sky, spring, summer. When Alduin summons his apocalypse, you can look straight up into that swirling vortex of fire and doom and shout Loch Vakur. The effect is instantaneous and incredibly satisfying. The purple clouds are essentially scrubbed from existence. The meteors stop falling. The thunder cuts out, replaced by the serene silence of a high-altitude afternoon. The sun comes out. You have just looked the World Eater in the eye and told him, no. It creates a hilarious narrative dissonance. Here is the firstborn of Akatosh, bringing the end times, summoning the ancient fire of creation to unmake reality, and you just turned it into a nice day for a picnic. It completely neuters his most visually impressive attack. Alduin is forced to land and fight you with teeth and fire breath, stripped of his divine wrath. It is a power move of the highest order. You aren't just fighting him physically, you're asserting dominance over the environment itself. This interaction works because Clear Skies is programmed with a stagger effect that applies specifically to weather systems. But here is the core in-game fact that many miss. That stagger effect applies to enemies too, provided you're outdoors. If you shout lock, just the first word, at a giant or a bandit while outside, they will stumble. It's not the full ragdoll launch of Unrelenting Force, but it's a significant interrupt. And here is the kicker. The cooldown for one word of Clear Skies is only 5 seconds. 5 seconds. Unrelenting Force takes significantly longer to recharge. This means you can effectively stagger lock an opponent by shouting the word sky at them over and over again. They try to swing a club, lock. They stumble. They try to cast a spell, lock. They stumble again. You can bully the toughest enemies in the game simply by aggressively demanding that the weather be nice in their general direction. The lore behind this is deeply rooted in the Nordic pantheon and touches on some obscure theological debates. The words Loch Vakur are not just commands, they are a prayer to Kyne. In the ancient Nordic faith, before the imperial cult brought the 9 divines to Skyrim, the Nords worshipped the animal totems. Kyne, the hawk, is the goddess of the storm, the widow of shore and the mother of men. She is the one who breathed them onto the throat of the world. When the Greybeards teach you this shout, they are teaching you to speak with Kyne's voice. Obscure texts suggest that the shout doesn't just move clouds, it pacifies the spirit of the air. In a sense, you are asking the sky to calm down. This has led to some fascinating community debates regarding the nature of the Thu'um. Is the Dragonborn forcing the sky to clear through domination, the Dragon Way, or asking it to clear through harmony, the Way of the Voice? Since the shout is gifted by the Greybeards, strict pacifists, it implies the latter. Yet, when used against Alduin, it becomes an act of war. It creates a paradoxical weapon, a shout of absolute peace used to facilitate a god-killing duel. There is also the matter of the mist in Sovngarde. Later in the main quest, when you enter the afterlife to hunt Alduin down for good, the valley is choked with a soul-snaring mist. You're told explicitly to use clear skies to path a way to the Hall of Valor. This confirms that the shout interacts with magical and metaphysical weather, not just the standard rain cycle. But fans have noted a strange interaction. If you use it in the Soulcairn, that dreary purple plane of oblivion from the Dawnguard DLC, it doesn't work. The sky there remains oppressive. This has fueled theories that the Soulcairn is a closed system, a pocket reality completely cut off from the Mundus and Kyne's influence, whereas Sovngarde, despite being an afterlife, is still connected to the ethereal currents that the voice can manipulate. On a more practical gameplay level, clear skies is the ultimate quality of life tool for the stealth archer or the scenic explorer. Skyrim is a beautiful game, but it is also a very dark and foggy game. How often have you tried to take a screenshot of the Solitude Arch or the waterfalls of the Reach, only for a sudden fog bank to roll in and ruin the lighting? Lokva Core is your personal lighting director. It resets the skybox to its clear day state, maximizing visibility. This is actually crucial for hunting dragons at night. Dragons can blend into the dark, cloudy skyboxes, becoming invisible until they roast you. Clearing the skies forces them to be silhouetted against the stars or the blue sky, making them easy targets for your arrows or targeted spells. Let's not forget the Aurora glitch. If you shout clear skies at night, specifically between 8 PM and 1 AM in-game time, you have a significantly higher chance of triggering an Aurora Borealis immediately. The game engine seems to interpret clear as show off the skybox assets, and it dumps the most beautiful visual effects onto your screen instantly. It's a wonderful way to end a long day of dungeon delving, stepping out of a gloomy cave, shouting at the heavens, and watching the lights dance for you. However, using this shout in populated cities can be weird. The guards generally don't mind it as much as Unrelenting Force, because you aren't hurting anyone, but they will still scold you. That shouting, it's making people nervous. You just stopped a thunderstorm that was soaking their armour and rusting their swords, and they complain. It highlights the general ungratefulness of Skyrim's populace. You are literally controlling the climate to improve their property value, and they ask you to keep it down. There is a tactile feeling to this shout that is different from the others. It feels expansive. The sound effect isn't a sharp crack or a boom, it's a rushing wind, a whoosh, that seems to travel upwards. It feels like taking a deep breath after being underwater. In the heat of combat, amidst the clanging of steel and the screams of the dying, taking a second to clear the skies creates a bizarre moment of zen. You are the eye of the storm. We should also touch on the interaction with Auriel's bow. If you have played Dawnguard, you know you can shoot a blood-cursed elven arrow at the sun to blot it out, creating a terrifying vampire eclipse. The sun turns into a black hole, the sky turns red, and vampires can walk in daylight. It's very metal. But what happens if you shout clear skies during this eclipse? Nothing. The eclipse overrides the shout. This is one of the few times the game tells you that an artifact of an Aedra, Auriel/Akatosh, is stronger than the voice of the Dragonborn. The sun remains blotted out until the next morning. It's a humbling reminder that while you can command the wind, you cannot command the sun itself when it has been cursed by a god's weapon. Conversely, if you use the sun-hallowed arrows to cause the sun to explode with light, clear skies will clear the resulting sunbeams if they linger too long, or if the weather shifts to rain during the effect. It's a messy interaction of scripts fighting for dominance over the skybox, often resulting in flickering lights and weird shadows, a glimpse into the godhead of the game engine struggling to keep up with your nonsense. So, the next time you're trudging through the Pale, freezing to death in survival mode, or facing down a dragon that thinks it can hide in the fog, remember that you don't have to accept the world as it is presented to you. You have the remote control for the weather, you can turn the blizzard off, you can make the sun shine on command. But altering the environment is a grand, sweeping gesture. It deals with the macro, the sky, the clouds, the storms. What if we want to get personal? What if, instead of stripping away the clouds to reveal the sun, we want to strip away something much closer to home? What if we want to strip away the very steel plate protecting a dragon priest's withered heart? As the clouds part and the sun shines down, revealing the gleaming armor of your enemy, you realize that even the strongest metal has a breaking point, and you have the words to find it. From the highest peaks where we command the weather, we descend into the damp, claustrophobic crypts where the air is stale and the enemies are crunchy. We have all encountered that one Draugr Deathlord who just won't die. You know the one. He's wearing ancient Nord armor that looks like it's made of rusted scrap metal, yet it somehow deflects your legendary Daedric sword like it's a toothpick. You hit him. His health bar barely moves and he shouts you across the room. It is a battle of attrition, a slow whittling down of hit points that feels less like a heroic duel and more like chopping wood. This is where the savvy Dragonborn stops hacking and starts cursing. Enter marked for death. Curi Lunaus, kill, leech, suffer. If Unrelenting Force is a blunt instrument, marked for death is a rusty poisoned scalpel. On the surface, the tooltip tells you it drains health and damages armor. Simple enough. But the reality of how this shout functions, or rather malfunctions in the game's code, turns it into the single most broken damage multiplier in your arsenal. We are talking about the armor-crushing glitch, a mechanic so devastating that it essentially removes the concept of defense from the game. Here is the core in-game fact that changes everything: the armor reduction applied by marked for death stacks. And in the original release of the game, and still present in various unpatched versions or specific console interactions, it is permanent for the duration of the entity's existence. Let's break down the math of this cruelty. A standard enemy has an armor rating. When you shout Cri Lunaus with all three words, you're stripping away 75 points of armor per second for 60 seconds. Do the math. That is a total reduction of 4,500 armor points. The armor cap for a player, the maximum useful armor you can have, is roughly 567. A dragon priest or a heavy warrior might have a few hundred. By the time the shout has run its full minute, their armor rating isn't just 0, it has plummeted into the negatives. Skyrim's damage formula doesn't stop at 0. When armor goes negative, it acts as a damage amplifier. It's the inverse of protection. So, if you shout a dragon priest, wait a minute while dodging his fireballs, and then hit him with a basic iron arrow, the game calculates the damage against an armor rating of minus 4,000. That iron arrow hits with the force of a tactical nuke. The boss health bar, which usually takes 5 minutes to deplete, and vanishes instantly. The enemy folds. It turns the terrifying Ebony Warrior, the hardest boss in the game, into a joke who can be one-shot by a wooden sword. This transforms the shout from a debuff into a death sentence. It is the I don't have time for this button for bullet sponge enemies. You shout, you wait, you tap them, they die. It feels illicit, like you've reached into the console commands and toggled a cheat code, but you're doing it entirely within the rules of the Thu'um. However, this power comes with a horrifying caveat that has led to many restarted playthroughs. The permanence of the effect applies to everyone, including your followers. Picture this tragedy. You are fighting a chaotic melee in a narrow hallway. You unleash marked for death to soften up a group of vampires. Lydia, brave and foolish as always, steps in front of you. The shout hits her. The visual effect, a purple, draining aura, surrounds her. You finish the fight, heal her up with a spell and move on. You think nothing of it, but the math is ticking. Her armor rating is disintegrating. An hour later, a mudcrab nips at her heels. Lydia, wearing full Daedric plate, collapses dead. You reload. Maybe it was a glitch. You try again. A bandit shoots her with a weak hunting bow. She dies instantly. You realize with dawning horror that you have permanently broken your companion. Her armor rating is now minus 3,000. She takes 400% extra damage from everything. There is no spell to fix this. There is no shrine to pray at. You have cursed her structurally and mathematically forever. This interaction has sparked intense community debate and cautionary tales on forums for over a decade. Is marked for death a bug, or is it the ultimate expression of the Thu'um's destructive nature? The words kill, leech, suffer imply a lingering, agonizing breakdown of the victim. Lore enthusiasts argue that the shout is designed to wither the target entirely, not just their flesh, but their very resistance to the world. It aligns with the darker, more domination-focused philosophy of the ancient dragons. To be marked for death is to be stripped of your hardness, your durability, your ability to exist in a violent world. The obscure lore surrounding this shout connects it to the darker history of the dragon cult. Unlike Kyne's peace or clear skies, which focus on harmony, marked for death feels like something crafted during the Dragon War to break the Nord armies. It targets the one thing Nords pride themselves on, their toughness. It doesn't burn them, it makes them weak, it makes them fragile. For a Nord warrior, that is a fate worse than death. It is a metaphysical humiliation. We also see this shout used by the Dark Brotherhood. In the Sanctuary you can find the word wall for marked for death, or at least one word of it. This suggests that the assassins of Sithis understand the utility of making a target vulnerable. It fits their MO perfectly. Strike once with the voice to ensure the kill, wait in the shadows while the target's defences rot away, and then deliver the final blow. It recontextualizes the Dragonborn not just as a warrior, but as an assassin of reality. Visually, the shout is understated. It doesn't have the flashy explosion of fire breath or the lightning storm of Stormcall. It applies a subtle shader effect, a draining of colour from the victim, and a distinct sound, a low grinding hum, like stone being eroded by sand. It's the sound of entropy. It's the sound of a statue crumbling into dust over centuries, accelerated into seconds. The negative armour phenomenon also leads to some bizarre gameplay interactions with brawl quests. If you have unknowingly hit a friendly NPC, say Uthgerd the Unbroken, with this shout during a dragon attack in Whiterun, and later challenge her to a friendly fistfight, you might accidentally kill her. A single punch from your unarmed fist, multiplied by her negative armour rating, deals lethal damage. The brawl turns into a murder. The guards swarm you. Circe, you're left standing over Uthgerd's body, confused why your right hook suddenly has the power of a freight train. There is a rhythm to using it effectively against multiple enemies. You can sweep the shout across a room. Kree, hit the bandit on the left. Lun, hit the mage in the middle. Os, catch the archer in the back. Now, the clock is ticking for all of them. You can switch to a defensive posture, blocking with your shield, letting the shout do the work. It turns the combat into a waiting game. You are the predator circling wounded prey, knowing that every second they stay alive is a second they become weaker. This shout also exposes the limitations of the game's difficulty scaling. Legendary difficulty works by increasing enemy health and damage while decreasing yours. It turns enemies into sponges. Marked for death bypasses this artificial difficulty. It doesn't matter if the enemy has 10,000 health if you're dealing 5,000 damage per swing because you broke their armor formula. It creates a satisfying loop where you use the game's math against itself to level the playing field. And let's consider the psychological aspect. Imagine being the bandit chief. A warrior walks in, shouts 3 words at you, and suddenly your steel plate feels like wet paper. Your shield feels like it's made of glass. You feel your strength draining away, not in a burst of pain, but in a slow, creeping exhaustion. The Dragonborn doesn't even have to attack you immediately, they just watch. It is the ultimate intimidation tactic. For those venturing into the Dragonborn DLC, this shout becomes essential against the lurkers in Apocrypha. These towering Daedric monstrosities have massive health pools and regenerate health. Marked for death counters their regeneration by constantly lowering their damage resistance, ensuring that your damage outpaces their healing. It turns a frustrating slog into a manageable encounter. So you've learned to break the laws of armour. You've learned that defense is a variable you can edit to 0. But stripping an enemy of their physical protection is a heavy, dark business. It's grim work. Sometimes you don't want to kill them. Sometimes you just want to mess with them. Sometimes the best way to win a fight isn't to shatter their armour, but to shatter their concentration. As we leave the crumbling bodies of the marked behind us, let's lighten the mood. Let's step into the shadows, put away the heavy weaponry, and explore a shout that proves the Dragonborn has a sense of humour. Because why just kill a bandit when you can make him think his own friends are insulting his mother? If marked for death is the shout of the executioner, grim, efficient, and horrifyingly permanent, then Throw Voice is the shout of the trickster god. It is the cosmic equivalent of tapping someone on the opposite shoulder and giggling when they turn the wrong way. We leave behind the heavy metaphysical weight of rotting armour and stepped-on souls to embrace something far more essential to the Skyrim experience: the stealth archer lifestyle. Because let's be honest, no matter how many times you start a new game promising to play a heavy armor two-handed warrior, within 4 hours you're crouching in the shadows with a bow, terrified of breaking concealment. In the high-stakes game of dungeon delving, silence is usually golden. But sometimes, silence is a problem. You're stuck in a corridor in Embushed Mine. There are 3 bandits sitting around a fire, roasting a skeever and complaining about the cold. They are facing you. If you shoot one, the others will see you. If you move, your heavy boots will clank. You are stalemated by the AI's patrol path. You need a distraction. You need them to look over there so you can go over here. Enter Zulmay Gut. Voice. Fool. Far. To the uninitiated, throw voice seems like a novelty. You aim your crosshair at a dark corner far away from your actual position, and you shout. But you don't shout with the thunderous bass of a dragon. You whisper the words, and the magic carries your voice to that distant point, projecting it as if you were standing right there. But here is where the shout transcends utility and enters the realm of pure comedy. When the shout lands, it doesn't just make a noise. It insults the target, and it does so with a vocabulary that can only be described as playground bully chic. Hey skeever butt! Hey melon nose! Hey slug breath! Hey cheese brain! It is jarring, hilarious, and utterly effective. The bandits, whose AI is programmed to investigate noise sources, immediately bristle. Is someone there? They mutter, drawing their weapons and walking toward the insult. They turn their backs to you, exposing their unarmored spines to your arrows or your dagger. You have successfully weaponized rudeness. You have turned a deadly combat encounter into a farce where grown men in fur armor are confused why the wall just called them a troll bait. The core in-game fact that makes this shout a staple for stealth builds is its cooldown efficiency. Unlike Unrelenting Force or Fire Breath, which leave you voiceless for nearly a minute, Throw Voice has a shockingly short recharge time. With all 3 words unlocked, the cooldown is arguably the shortest in the game, mere seconds. This allows you to spam it. You can ping-pong enemies around a room like confused cats chasing a laser pointer. You can make them run to the left corner, hey ugly, then the right corner, over here, keeping them in a perpetual state of investigation while you loot the chest right behind them. This mechanic reveals the alert state of Skyrim's NPCs. When you use Throw Voice, enemies enter a yellow alert state, searching but not combat ready. This is crucial because sneak attack damage multipliers only apply when the enemy hasn't detected you. By forcing them to detect a ghost sound elsewhere, you ensure your sneak attack bonus remains active. You're essentially hacking their perception, forcing the game engine to register a threat where none exists. However, obtaining this shout involves a brutal irony that many players forget. The word wall for Throw Voice is located at Shearpoint, one of the few outdoor word walls guarded by a dragon priest. And not just any dragon priest, Croesus. Croesus is a nightmare for low-level players. He wears a mask that boosts alchemy, archery, and lockpicking, and he wields a staff of fireballs that can two-shot you. To learn the art of calling someone Cheesebrain, you must first defeat an ancient floating lich who rains explosive death from the sky. There is a delicious absurdity in this. You fight a terrifying duel against a millennia-old sorcerer, dodging fire and ice, burning through all your potions just to unlock the ability to make fart jokes from the shadows. It suggests that the ancient Nords, or perhaps the dragons themselves, had a very specific sense of humour. Why would a wall dedicated to the power of the voice contain insults? This leads to a popular fan theory regarding the nature of Throw Voice. The voice that projects the insults is not the Dragonborn's voice. Whether you are a gruff orc male or a high-pitched elf female, the insults are delivered in a distinct, rasping, almost gremlin-like whisper. It sounds like a generic male Nord trying to be sneaky, or perhaps a minor Daedra. Fans have speculated that Throw Voice doesn't just project sound. It summons a minor spirit or a voice construct to deliver the taunt. Some even theorize it's a connection to Sheogorath, the Daedric Prince of Madness, bleeding into the Dragonborn's repertoire. Why else would the insults be so childish? Skeever butt isn't exactly a warrior's taunt, it's a prank. Another theory suggests the shout is actually a form of ventriloquism enhanced by tonal architecture. You aren't summoning a spirit, you are bending the airwaves to carry your intent, but because the intent is deception, the universe translates it into the most universally understood form of deception, mocking the intelligence of the listener. The gremlin voice is simply how the universe sounds when it's being sarcastic. Tactically, throw voice is superior to the standard shoot an arrow at the wall. Distraction method for one key reason. Economy. Arrows cost gold, or resources to craft. Insults are free. Furthermore, shooting an arrow requires you to reveal your line of sight. If you miss the angle, the arrow might bounce and alert them to your true position. Throw voice is hit scan magic. Where you look is where the sound goes, even if it defies physics. You can throw your voice through a grate, over a wall, or into a different room entirely. Let's talk about the specific interactions with different enemy types. Using throw voice on the Fulmer, the blind, subterranean elves, feels almost cruel. Since they rely entirely on hearing, the shout completely breaks their pathfinding. They will swarm the location of the sound with terrifying speed. This can be used to cluster them together for a well-placed fireball or an exploding rune. You shout at a cluster of poisonous mushrooms, the Falmer rush to investigate the melon nose comment, and you detonate the trap. It's stealth gameplay perfection. Dragons, however, are immune to your insults. You can shout, "Hey, slug breath," at a legendary dragon all day, and it will not care. It knows where you are. This limitation reinforces the idea that dragons speak the language of truth. A lie, a thrown voice, has no purchase on a creature that dominates reality with its own voice. You cannot trick a dragon with a parlor trick. But against the humanoid races, bandits, vampires, guards, it creates moments of emergent storytelling that are pure gold. Imagine sneaking into the Thalmor embassy. You are tense. Malborn has smuggled in your gear. You're hiding behind a potted plant. A Thalmor justiciar is blocking the door. You whisper Zulme gut. "Hey, ugly!" The haughty high elf stiffens. "What was that?" He marches off to investigate a sweet roll on a table in the corner. You slip past. You have just dismantled the security of the Aldmeri Dominion with a "your mum" joke. There is also a hidden utility for the pacifist run we mentioned earlier. If you're trying to navigate a dungeon without killing anyone, throw voice is your best friend. You can guide enemies away from doorways, clear paths, and manipulate patrols without ever drawing a weapon. You become a shepherd of stupid AI, guiding them gently into corners so you can walk past unharmed. The sound design of the shout deserves credit for its subtlety. Unlike the thunderclap of Unrelenting Force, throw voice has a soft, rushing wind sound, a magical whoosh, followed by the muffled directional insult. It makes you feel like a phantom. It enhances the fantasy of being a master thief, a nightingale, or an assassin. You are the wind that mocks them. Comparing it to Marked for Death or Stormcall, throw voice feels incredibly grounded despite its magical nature. It doesn't break the game with damage numbers, it manipulates the game state. It plays with the rules of detection. It reminds us that the Dragonborn isn't just a sledgehammer, they are a scalpel, they are a whisper in the dark. And let's not forget the sheer joy of hearing the variety of insults. "Hey, troll bait" is a personal favourite. It implies the target is so worthless their only purpose is to be eaten by a troll. "Hey, skeever butt" is classic Skyrim rustic charm. These insults ground the Dragonborn in the setting. You aren't using high fantasy elvish insults. You're using the insults of the common Nord. It connects you to the land and its people even as you're about to rob them blind. So you've mastered the art of the rude distraction. You've sent bandits chasing after imaginary enemies and cleared entire forts without being seen. You've proven that words can hurt, or at least confuse, just as much as swords. But sometimes, the things blocking your path aren't people. Sometimes, they're beasts. Huge, hairy, stomping beasts that can launch you into the stratosphere with a single club swing. The wilderness of Skyrim is unforgiving. Giants roam the tundra, protecting their mammoths with jealous rage. Bears ambush you in the rift. Sabercats pounce from the snowdrifts of Winterhold. Insulting a bear won't work. It doesn't care if you call it melon nose. It just wants to eat you. To survive the savage wilds, you need to change your tune. You need to stop mocking and start soothing. You need to speak the language of the wild and ask the land itself to grant you passage. We leave the snickering shadows and the childish insults of throw voice behind, stepping out from the dark corners of bandit forts and into the wide, sweeping tundra of Whiterun Hold. The sun is high, the grass is swaying in the wind, and the ground is shaking rhythmically. Thump, thump, thump. You know that sound. It's the heartbeat of the plains. A giant is herding his mammoths, and you, in your infinite wisdom, have decided to take a shortcut through his camp to get to a quest marker. Usually, this ends one of two ways. You sprint past, chugging stamina potions while boulders whistle past your ears, or you get introduced to the Skyrim space program, courtesy of a giant's club. But there is a third option, a path of tranquility that turns the most dangerous creatures in the wilderness into oversized, shaggy puppies. Was Kyne's peace. Kandremov, Kyne, peace, trust. This shout is the antithesis of the Dragonborn's usual modus operandi. We spend 90% of the game shouting things apart, shattering armor, blasting fire, throwing people off cliffs. Kyne's peace is about putting things back together. It is about harmony. When you stand before a charging mammoth, tusks lowered, ready to trample you into paste, and you shout Khan, a wave of soothing green energy washes over the beast. The aggression drains away instantly. The red dot on your compass vanishes. The mammoth stops, shakes its massive head, and goes back to grazing as if you were just another rock or tree. The core in-game fact here is stark. Kyne's peace functions as a massive area of effect calm spell that works on almost every beast in the game, up to a certain level cap. But unlike the illusion spell Calm, which requires you to dual cast and invest perks to work on high-level targets, the Shout, once fully unlocked, works on the heavy hitters right out of the box. Giants, mammoths, saber-cats, snowy saber-cats, cave bears, trolls, even the dreaded frost troll on the 7,000 steps. It turns the hostile wilderness into a petting zoo. There is a profound sense of relief when you use this in the early game. Remember that first trek to Ivarstead. The frost troll leaps down from the ledge. You have iron armor and a terrified follower. You shout Kyne's peace. The troll stops screaming. It just sits there, breathing heavily, scratching its ear. You walk past it, heart pounding but physically untouched. It feels like a cheat, like you've accessed the developer console and toggled T-Detect off. But it is a legitimate canonical power of the voice. Let's dig into the obscure lore because the name Kyne is significant here. To the Imperials and the assimilated Nords, she is Kinnereth, the goddess of the heavens and the winds, a gentle deity of nature. But to the Old Nords, she is Kyne, the warrior wife of Shor. She is the storm. She is the one who leads the souls of the dead to Sovngarde. Why would a warrior goddess grant a shout of peace? The answer lies in the ancient Nordic worldview. Peace, to a Nord, isn't just the absence of war, it is the order of the natural world. It is the hierarchy where the strong protect the weak and the beast respect the land. When you shout Kyne's peace, you aren't casting a spell of mind control. You're asserting your authority as a child of the sky. You're reminding the bear and the wolf that you are the Dovahkiin, a being with the soul of a dragon, the apex predator of all apex predators. You're speaking the language of the totem spirits. The animals don't attack you because they recognize you as part of the natural order, perhaps even a superior part of it. This leads to a fascinating fan theory regarding the druid playstyle. Some players interpret Kyne's peace not as calming the animals, but as momentarily aligning their souls with yours. This explains why, in some versions of the game or with certain mods, animals affected by Kyne's peace will actually turn and fight for you if you are attacked by bandits shortly after. It suggests a temporary alliance, a pack leader mechanic that was perhaps cut or simplified during development. You aren't just pacifying them, as you're drafting them. One of the most visually striking uses of this shout is in the murky swamps of Morthal or the foggy forests of the Rift. You're surrounded by spiders or Shorus, creatures that trigger a primal, kill it with fire response in most players. Kyne's peace works on them too. Seeing a giant venom-spitting insect suddenly stop and passive-aggressively click its mandibles at you without attacking is a surreal experience. It highlights that in Tamriel, even the creepy crawlies are subject to the spiritual authority of the voice. However, there is a limit. The shout does not work on the undead. Obviously they have no natural spirit to soothe, or on dragons, who are too arrogant to be soothed. It also has a quirky interaction with Spriggans. Spriggans are nature guardians who can mind control animals to attack you. If you encounter a Spriggan with a charmed bear and you shout Kyne's peace, you enter a tug of war for the bear's soul. Often, the shout overrides the Spriggan's magic because the Thu'um is a higher form of tonal architecture than the Spriggan's earth magic. You essentially steal their pet. The Spriggan, enraged, usually attacks you personally, while the bear just sits there, confused about who mum and dad are. Let's not forget the practical utility for the pacifist run we keep mentioning. If you are role-playing a monk or a scholar who refuses to kill, Kyne's Peace is your primary defensive tool outdoors. It allows you to harvest alchemy ingredients in peace. You can walk right up to a saber cat, pluck the mountain flower from under its nose and walk away. It changes the genre of the game from survival action to nature walk simulator, but the shout has a sinister side if you are feeling creative. We mentioned the trap trigger earlier with Call of Valor, but Kyne's Peace has a more deceptive application. You can use it to lure enemies into a false sense of security, not the animals, but the people chasing you. Imagine you are being pursued by a group of Thalmor justiciars. You run into a giant's camp. The giant raises his club, ready to smash everyone. You shout Kyne's Peace. The giant chills out and ignores you. The Thalmor, however, do not have the voice. They run in, aggressive and shouting spells. The giant, seeing these rude elves invading his personal space while you stand there politely, switches aggro to them. You have effectively weaponized a giant by pacifying him only toward yourself. It's a dirty, brilliant trick. Visually, the shout is subtle. A green expanding ring of energy, similar to a restoration spell but more primal. The sound is a low, resonant thrum, like a massive cello string being plucked inside a cave. It's a sound that vibrates in your chest. It feels grounding. In a game full of shrieking wraiths and roaring dragons, Kyne's Peace offers a moment of auditory relief. There is also the detect life component. Many players forget that the first word of the shout, Kyne, often reveals the location of nearby animals on your compass, similar to the detect life spell but specific to beasts. This makes it a hunting tool. If you're looking for deer hides or saber cat teeth for crafting, a quick whisper of Kyne will highlight your prey. It's a dark irony, using the shout of peace to facilitate a hunt. But again, Kyne is the hunter goddess. The cycle of predator and prey is peaceful in her eyes, provided it is done with respect. One of the most amusing interactions occurs with the Netch on Solstheim. These floating jellyfish cows are generally passive, but if you accidentally aggro a bull Netch, they can be surprisingly deadly with their shock attacks. Kyne's Peace works on them, causing them to bob gently in the air, tentacles drifting lazily. It's a moment of pure xenobiology zen. You can float alongside them, watching the ash fall, a master of alien ecosystems. But let's be real for a moment. Most of us use Kyne's Peace because we are lazy. We don't want to fight the 3 cave bears in that one cave for the Thieves Guild quest. We don't want to waste arrows on wolves that die in one hit anyway but are annoying to aim at. It is the shoe fly button of Skyrim. It saves us time. It saves us weapon durability. It saves us from having to dismount our horse, fight a wolf for 2 seconds, and then remount. The shout also serves as a reminder of the lost history of the Nords. In the days before the Alessian Order and the Imperial cult, the Nords worshipped the totems, the hawk, the wolf, the snake, the moth. When you use this shout, you are channeling that primal faith. You are acting as a tongue of the old gods. It gives the Dragonborn a connection to the land that goes deeper than political borders or civil wars. You are the land's warden, and sometimes, being the warden means stopping a massacre. We've all seen it. A dragon attacks a farm, and the farm animals, chickens, cows, horses, go utterly insane, running into the fire or trying to fight the dragon. A quick Kyne's Peace can actually save the livestock. It tells the cow, hey, maybe don't headbutt the fire-breathing lizard. You become the protector of the innocent, the shepherd of the stupid. So, you have learned to soothe the savage beast. You have walked among mammoths like a brother and calmed the rage of the frost troll. You have turned the wilderness from a gauntlet of death into a scenic garden. But eventually the garden ends. Eventually you hit a wall. A literal wall, or a gate, or a chasm that even your ethereal form cannot drift across. Sometimes peace isn't enough. Sometimes you need speed. Not just the speed of a horse or a sprint, but the speed of a storm wind. You need to move so fast that the world blurs, physics breaks, and you find yourself standing behind the locked door before the game even realizes you've moved. You need to stop walking with the animals and start racing the wind itself. We have learned to stop the world with a whisper of peace, soothing the savage beasts of the tundra. We have learned to become ghosts to survive the fall. But sometimes you don't want to stop, and you don't want to fall. Sometimes you just want to go. Fast. faster than the game engine intended you to go. We are talking about the moment the Greybeards take you out into that freezing courtyard, Borri opens a gate, and for the first time, you realise that walking is for chumps. Whirlwind Sprint, Wuldnar Kest, Whirlwind, Fury, Tempest. To the casual observer, this shout is a simple dash mechanic, a burst of speed to close the gap on an archer or cross a widening chasm in a Nordic ruin. But to the true Dovahkiin, and especially to the speedrunning community, this shout is the key to the entire kingdom. It is the tool that breaks the boundaries of Skyrim's reality, allowing you to bypass locked doors, skip entire quest lines, and enter places the developers never wanted you to see. The core in-game fact that defines Whirlwind Sprint is its interaction with the game's collision detection. When you shout Wuld, you're propelled forward at a velocity that exceeds the standard physics checks. For a fraction of a second, the game struggles to keep up with your position. If you time it right, usually just as a scripted gate is slamming shut, like the puzzle gates in Eustengrav or the trapdoors in Dwemer Ruins, you can slip through gaps that are technically too small for your character model. It turns the Dragonborn into a sentient needle, threading the eye of the world's geometry. Let's go back to High Hrothgar for a moment. Master Borri, the quietest of the Greybeards, teaches you this shout. There is something profoundly cool about Borri. He never speaks, likely because his voice would shatter the windows, but he demonstrates Wuld by blurring across the courtyard instantly. It's a flex. He's telling you, I can move faster than you can think. The trial they set up for you, sprinting through the gate before it closes, is the tutorial for a lifetime of breaking and entering. But the real magic happens when you combine this shout with a mundane household object, the wooden platter. This is where we enter the realm of the platter glitch, a technique so beloved by the community that it has become honorary law. Here is how it works. You hold a wooden platter, or a bucket or a bowl, in front of your face using the grab button. You walk up to a locked wall or a gate you aren't supposed to open yet, say, the back door to the Gildenhall Barrow or the gate to the Tower of Mzark. You press the platter against the wall, and then you shout, Wuldnar Kest. The physics engine panics. It sees the platter, it sees the wall, and it sees you moving at Mach 1 into both of them. Unable to resolve the collision, it simply pushes you through the wall to the other side. You have just clipped. You're now out of bounds, or inside a room that requires a key you won't get for another 20 hours of gameplay. You have effectively used the voice to tell the laws of solid matter to sit down and shut up. This allows for massive sequence breaking. You can skip the entire tedious climb of the throat of the world by clipping through the wind barrier, though you might freeze. You can enter the Thalmor embassy without an invitation. You can grab the Elder Scroll from Blackreach without ever fighting through the Dwarven city. It transforms the narrative of the game from a linear story into a choose-your-own adventure, where the only limit is how many wooden plates you can carry in your inventory. Lore-wise, the words themselves offer a glimpse into the Nord understanding of speed. Wuld, whirlwind, implies a force of nature, chaotic and uncontainable. Na, fury, suggests that this speed is driven by anger or intensity. It isn't the calm speed of a flowing river, but the violent speed of a storm. Kest, tempest, seals the deal. You aren't just running, you're becoming a localized stormfront. There is an obscure text, often overlooked, that mentions a tongue named Hrara the Swift, who could outrun his own voice. The legend says he would shout a taunt at an enemy, then sprint behind them and tap them on the shoulder before the sound of the taunt reached their ears. While likely exaggeration, Whirlwind Sprint makes this feel plausible. The sound design supports this. When you shout, there is a boom, but then a Doppler effect, whoosh, as you leave the sound behind. You're moving faster than sound. However, speed is dangerous. We must address the well-e-coyote factor. How many of us have stood on a cliff edge, intended to use clear skies or aura whisper, but accidentally had Whirlwind Sprint equipped? You tap the shout button. Wood. You launch yourself off the cliff with enthusiastic velocity, unlike Become Ethereal, which saves you. Whirlwind Sprint just ensures you hit the bottom faster. It is the leading cause of accidental death among high-level Dragonborns who forgot to check their active effects. The shout also has a unique interaction with carry weight. If you are over-encumbered, perhaps you're carrying 30 dragon bones and every cheese wheel in Whiterun, you can still use Whirlwind Sprint. It is the only way to move quickly while carrying a ton of loot. You become a sluggish, waddling hoarder who occasionally bursts forward at supersonic speeds, only to stop and waddle again. It's a hilarious image, but a lifesaver when you refuse to drop that third set of ebony armor just in case. Combat applications are often underrated. Most players use it to run away, but the aggressive Whirlwind Sprint is terrifying. Closing the gap against a mage or an archer instantly forces them into melee range, where they are weak. You can shout through a fireball, taking the damage but ignoring the knockback, to deliver a killing blow. It turns the battlefield into a chessboard where you are the queen, able to cross the entire board in a single move. There is a specific challenge in the Dragonborn DLC involving the Karstag boss fight. Karstag is a frost giant ghost who hits like a truck. The arena is small. Whirlwind Sprint becomes essential here, not to attack, but to dodge. When he winds up his massive stomp or summons his blizzard, a quick wold gets you to the other side of the arena, buying you time to heal. It changes the rhythm of the fight from a slugfest to a dance. And we have to mention the air dash. If you sprint off a ledge and shout in mid-air, you maintain your momentum. This allows you to cross gaps that are impossible to jump. In the College of Winterhold, beneath the bridge, are hidden areas and chill spots that are only accessible if you master the air dash. It turns Skyrim into a platformer. You find yourself looking at the architecture not as scenery, but as geometry to be conquered. Can I make that jump? Suddenly becomes a valid question. The community debate around this shout often centres on the teleportation versus speed theory. Does the Dragonborn actually move through the intervening space, or do they warp? The game engine treats it as movement. You can trigger tripwires, but the lore suggests a form of windwalking. If you shout wold through a line of enemies, you don't knock them down like bowling pins, unless you have a specific Black Book perk, which we will get to. You pass through the gaps. This implies a level of precision that is supernatural. You aren't just fast, you are fluid. Visually, the blur effect is disorienting. The edges of the screen warp, the colours streak, and for a second, you are blind. This is a brilliant piece of design. It conveys the sheer violence of the acceleration. You're moving so fast your eyes can't process the visual data. When you stop, the world snaps back into focus, often leaving you facing a wall you didn't expect to be quite so close. Let's also recall the guards' interaction. If you whirlwind sprint in a city, the guards get nervous. Need to get somewhere fast, they ask sarcastically, but sometimes they are impressed. By Ysmir, no, you're fast, is one of the few times the NPCs acknowledge your physical prowess directly without complaining about magic. Speed is a universal language. Everyone understands the value of being somewhere else instantly. One of the most satisfying uses is simply fast travel without fast travelling. Skyrim is big. Running from Whiterun to Rorikstead takes time, but if you chain Whirlwind Sprint with an Amulet of Talos and a blessing from the Shrine of Talos, reducing shout cooldowns by 40%, you can sprint every few seconds. You become a blur on the landscape, passing caravans and wolves alike, a courier of your own destiny. You engage with the open world on your own terms, and for the thieves among us, Whirlwind Sprint is the ultimate getaway vehicle. You steal the diamond, the guards shout "halt!" and wold, you're gone. By the time they round the corner, you are 3 streets away, blending into the crowd or halfway up the city wall. It fulfills the fantasy of the master thief who vanishes into thin air, but speed has its limits. You can run from guards, you can run from dragons, and you can run from your responsibilities as the saviour of the world, but you cannot run from the need to actually do things. Eventually you have to stop running and start working. You have to mine that ore, chop that wood, and swing that pickaxe. We have all been there, standing in front of a Stalrim deposit or a rich vein of ebony, tapping the attack button, watching the slow, repetitive animation of the pickaxe swinging. Clink, clink, clink. It's tedious, it's slow, it breaks the immersion of being a god-slaying hero. What if I told you there was a way to mine that ore in seconds? What if I told you that the wind could do more than just push you forward? What if it could make your arms move with the speed of a hummingbird's wings, as you sheath your weapon and pull out your pickaxe, staring at the blue ice of Solstheim? Remember that the voice isn't just for combat, it's for industry, and we are about to turn mining into an extreme sport. We have sprinted across the map, defying the limitations of stamina and physics, but eventually every adventurer stops running. Why? Because they see something shiny. Skyrim is a province built on the backs of miners. from the Iron of Embershard to the Ebony of Gloombound, and the mystical, maddeningly slow-to-mine Stolrim of Solstheim. We have all been there. You find a vein of ore, you press the interact button, your character enters a locked animation loop. Clink. Pause. Clink. Pause. Clink. It takes 9 strikes to clear a vein. It feels like an eternity. In a game about dragon slaying, why are we spending 3 minutes watching a mining animation? Enter Elemental Fury, Sugra Dun, Air, Battle, Grace. To the uninitiated, this shout is often dismissed as a warrior's buff, something you use when you want to swing your sword a bit faster. But the true disciples of the voice, and the impatient industrialists of Tamriel, know it as the mining speed hack. Here is the core in-game fact that transforms your resource gathering. You do not have to enter the mining animation to mine ore. If you equip a pickaxe, or better yet 2 pickaxes, as a weapon and physically strike the ore vein with an attack, it mines the ore. It counts as a hit. Now combine this with Elemental Fury. When you shout Sugra Dun, your attack speed is increased by up to 100% for 15 seconds. Do the math. You stand in front of a Stolrim deposit which normally takes 3 times as long to mine as iron. You equip a pickaxe in each hand, you shout Su! The wind wraps around your arms, or turning them into a blur of motion. You unleash a dual-wield power attack. Your character becomes a chaotic windmill of steel. Thwack, 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 thwack. The vein is depleted in less than 2 seconds. You have turned a tedious chore into a violent, rapid-fire industrial operation. You are the John Henry of Skyrim, except instead of a steam drill, you have the ancient magic of the dragons powering your elbows. This interaction feels illicit. The game clearly wants you to watch the animation, to feel the weight of the labour. By shouting at the rock and flailing your arms like a caffeinated mud crab, you're bypassing the intended pacing of the game. But it is entirely effective. It turns the boring loop of find ore, wait, loot, into find ore, shred, loot. It keeps the adrenaline high even when you're just doing chores. However, there is a catch, a mechanic that balances this speed against the game's magic system. Elemental Fury cannot be used on enchanted weapons. This limitation is crucial. If you are wielding a Daedric Sword of Burning, the shout will fail. The wind cannot wrap around a blade already wreathed in magical fire. This means that to use the mining speed hack, you must carry a standard, non-magical pickaxe, not the notched pickaxe you find at the Throat of the World, which has a shock enchantment, but a plain, boring iron pickaxe. It forces high-level players, who usually sell all their non-magical loot, to keep a mundane tool in their inventory, specifically for these moments of frenzied extraction. This restriction leads to some fascinating build crafting within the community. Players have discovered that there are unique weapons in the game that look enchanted or have unique effects, but are not technically tagged as enchanted by the game's code. The most famous of these is the Longhammer, a unique orcish warhammer found in Liar's Retreat. It has a natural effect of swinging faster than a normal warhammer, but it can still be enchanted. More importantly, it can be buffed by Elemental Fury. When you combine the Longhammer with Elemental Fury, you achieve the highest damage per second, DPS, possible in the game, outstripping even the most broken crafting loops. You're swinging a massive two-handed hammer with the speed of a dagger. It looks ridiculous. The animations break. The character's arms jerk and snap with unnatural speed, turning the Dragonborn into a blur of crushing force. It is the closest the game gets to anime-style combat speed, but let's look at the obscure lore of the words themselves. Su, air, gra, battle, dun, grace. The inclusion of grace is significant. It implies that the shout isn't just about raw speed, it's about fluidity. It removes the resistance of the air, it makes the weapon feel weightless. In the lore of the Redguards, specifically the Swordsingers, there is a concept of the Shi-Hai, the spirit sword. While not directly related, Elemental Fury taps into a similar idea, that the warrior and the weapon become one seamless entity, moving without friction. You aren't forcing the weapon to move, you're asking the wind to carry it. This connects to a community theory regarding the Windwalker perk in the light armor tree. Fans speculate that Elemental Fury is a manifestation of Kyne's favour toward the agile warrior. Heavy armor slows you down, the voice speeds you up. It creates a dichotomy between the tank, who relies on armor rating and unrelenting force, and the Skirmisher, who relies on evasion and elemental fury. The Shout rewards a playstyle of constant motion, of never staying in one place long enough to get hit. Visually, the Shout is subtle but effective. A white wind effect trails from your arms and the sound design is excellent. A high-pitched whistling, like a gale blowing through a canyon, accompanies every swing. It gives tactile feedback to the speed increase. You feel faster. The whoosh of the weapon becomes a continuous hum. There is also the vegetable soup synergy. If you consume vegetable soup, which regenerates 1 stamina per second, and use elemental fury, you can execute infinite power attacks. Since power attacks only require 1 stamina to start, and the soup gives you that 1 stamina constantly, you can power attack continuously with increased speed. This turns the Dragonborn into a stunlock machine. Enemies cannot block, cannot attack, and cannot move because they are being hit 5 times a second by a dual-wielding maniac screaming at the wind. But let's return to the mining. The absurdity of using a shout capable of slaying dragons to mine corundum cannot be overstated. Imagine being a bandit watching this. You see the Dragonborn, the legendary hero, walk up to a rock. They shout a word of power that shakes the ground, and then they furiously attack a rock for 2 seconds. Grab a chunk of metal and run away. It completely demystifies the hero. It grounds them in the petty need for resources. There is a specific interaction with dual wielding that makes the shout even more broken. If you dual wield a dagger in your left hand and a mace in your right, the game calculates your dual wield attack speed based on the left hand weapon, the dagger. Add elemental fury to this, and your mace swings at dagger speeds plus the shout boost. You're essentially hitting enemies with a sledgehammer at the speed of a sewing machine. It shreds armor, health, and the game's frame rate in equal measure. For the dedicated chef roleplayers, yes, they exist, this shout is essential. Equipping a knife and fork, weapon versions found in Riften or Hearthfire homes, and using elemental fury allows you to eat enemies with terrifying speed. The damage is low, but the humiliation factor is high. Defeating Alduin with a fork moving at the speed of sound is the ultimate disrespect. And let's not forget the interaction with followers. You cannot shout elemental fury onto your followers. They are stuck swinging at normal speeds. This creates a funny contrast in combat. You're a blur of motion, dispatching 3 enemies before your housecarl has finished winding up their first swing. "I'm right behind you," they yell, while you're already looting the bodies. It highlights the gap between a mortal warrior and the Dovahkiin. The shout also has a niche use in leveling skills. Since weapon skill experience is based on the base damage of the weapon and the number of hits, hitting a fast regenerating enemy, like a troll or shadowmere, with a low damage weapon, like an iron dagger, at super speed is the fastest way to level one-handed. You aren't trying to kill them, you're trying to hit them as many times as possible. Elemental Fury turns a 10-minute training session into a 2-minute blur. But for all its utility in mining and combat, Elemental Fury is purely physical. It speeds up the body, it sharpens the reflexes, it deals with the material world, steel, stone, flesh. It makes you a better killer, a faster miner, a more efficient machine. But what if the enemy isn't just physical? What if the enemy is a dragon soaring high above, mocking your puny sword and your fast arms? A dragon is not just a lizard, it is a shard of time, an eternal being that does not understand the concept of end. No matter how fast you swing your sword, you cannot cut a concept. To fight a dragon on its own terms, you don't need to be faster. You need to make them understand what it means to stop. You need to force a god to understand that it can die. This brings us to the most metaphysical, and perhaps the most cruel, shout in the Dragonborn's arsenal. It is the shout that won the Dragon War. It is the shout that breaks the mind of the immortal. We have learned to accelerate our bodies to blur the lines of physics, mining ore and swinging swords with industrial efficiency. But no matter how fast you are, no matter how quickly your pickaxe strikes the earth, you are still bound to the ground. You are mortal. Above you, circling in the high currents of the Ethereal, is a creature that is not. A dragon does not worry about stamina or gravity or the passage of time. To a dragon, time is just another dimension to navigate, and death is a rumour that happens to lesser beings. Fighting a dragon in Skyrim usually involves a lot of waiting. You wait for them to stop strafing the village, you wait for them to hover, you shoot arrows that bounce harmlessly off their scales. It is a dance of frustration. But the ancient Nords, facing the tyranny of the dragon cult, Why, didn't have time for frustration. They needed a weapon that could drag a god out of the sky. They created Dragonrend, Yor-Zar-Frul, mortal, finite, temporary. This shout is unique in the Dragonborn's arsenal because it was not taught to you by dragons. It couldn't be. The Greybeards, led by Paarthurnax, physically cannot understand it. To a dragon, the concept of mortality is an incomprehensible void, a mathematical error in the song of creation. They are shards of Akatosh, the dragon god of time. They are time. They are eternal. When you learn this shout by peering back through the time wound at the throat of the world, you're witnessing the desperate, hateful creativity of humanity. You are learning a weapon forged from pure existential dread. The core in-game fact is simple but game-changing. Dragonrend forces a dragon to land. When you hit a dragon with this blue-wreathed shout, the game's AI priority shifts instantly. The dragon ceases its flight pattern. It stops breathing fire. It looks for the nearest valid landing zone, which in the chaotic geography of Skyrim might be a flat patch of grass, a rooftop, or awkwardly wedged between two trees, and it crashes down. It doesn't glide, it falls. It is grounded for roughly 15 to 22 seconds, depending on the number of words used. But let's look closer at the why. The game treats this as a status effect, but the obscure lore suggests it is a psychological attack of devastating proportions. When you shout Yor-Zar-Frul, you aren't using gravity or force. You're forcing the dragon's mind to comprehend the concept of death. You're imposing the limitation of a mortal soul onto an immortal consciousness. Imagine being a creature that has existed since the dawn of time, and suddenly, for 20 seconds, you vividly experience the crushing reality that you will end. The panic this induces is what forces them to land. They are literally paralyzed by an existential crisis. They forget how to fly because they're too busy coping with the sudden realization of their own finitude. This adds a layer of metaphysical horror to every dragon fight. You aren't just hurting them, you are traumatizing them. It explains why dragons, who are normally arrogant and talkative, often become silent or scream in rage when hit by it. You are violating their very nature. Paarthurnax warns you of this. Yea, he tells you that the shout was forged in cruelty. It is a weapon of spite. I cannot know it, he says. Conceptually, I cannot hold it in my mind. This implies that for the Dragonborn to use it, they must tap into a deep, human resentment of the divine. You have to hate the fact that they are eternal and you are not. From a gameplay perspective, Dragonrend is the ultimate equalizer. Without it, melee builds are at the mercy of the dragon's AI. With it, you dictate the terms of the engagement. You shout, they land, you power attack. The moment they take off, you shout again. You can keep a dragon in a perpetual state of grounded vulnerability, effectively stun-locking a demigod. However, the landing zone mechanic can be finicky. All veterans know the pain of shouting Dragonrend at a dragon over a dense forest or a craggy mountain peak. The dragon wants to land, the status effect is active, but the AI cannot find a flat mesh to play the landing animation. So, the dragon flies off into the distance, circling miles away trying to find a parking spot. You're left running after it, stamina draining, cursing the very success of your shout. Get back here and have your existential crisis near me, you yell at the screen. There is also a fascinating interaction with the damage multiplier. While grounded by Dragonrend, dragons are not just stationary, they are often weaker. They flinch more easily. This aligns with the lore. Their will is broken. They are fighting through a fog of terror. This is the perfect window to apply Marked for Death, or unleash a dual-cast Thunderbolt. You're kicking them while they are down, literally and spiritually. Tactically, Dragonrend has a hidden benefit. It interrupts breath attacks. If a legendary dragon is winding up a fire breath that will absolutely one-shot you, a quick jaw, just the first word, will stagger them out of the animation. The cooldown for one word is incredibly short, 10 seconds. This allows you to play purely defensively, using the shout as a silent spell whenever the dragon tries to speak fire. You're effectively telling them, "Shut up, you're mortal," every 10 seconds. Interestingly, this shout is useless against anything else. Shouting mortality at a bandit, a bear, or a mudcrab does nothing. Why? Because they already know they are mortal. A bandit lives with the fear of death every day. You can't traumatize a mudcrab with the concept of an ending. It's just a crab. This reinforces the specific targeted nature of the Thu'um. It is a key designed for a specific lock. It only hurts those who believe they are above the rules. The community has long debated the morality of using Dragonrend. The Greybeards believe the voice should be used for worship of Kyne, not for violence. By using Dragonrend, are you corrupting your own soul? Are you feeding the World Eater aspect of your own nature? Some roleplayers refuse to use it after the main quest, seeing it as a necessary evil to stop Alduin but too cruel for everyday use. Others spam it on every dragon they see because, well, dragon bones are heavy and we don't have time to chase them. Visually, the shout is distinct. It creates a dark blue-black haze around the dragon, contrasting with the bright fire or ice of other shouts. It looks like a curse. It looks like you're draping a heavy wet blanket of doom over their wings. The sound is sharp, cracking, and discordant. It doesn't harmonise with a world like Kyne's peace. It sounds like something breaking. There is a humorous side to this grim weapon, though. Sometimes the physics engine interacts with the forced landing in hilarious ways. A dragon hit by Dragonrend might crash land so hard it ploughs into the ground, sliding for 100 yards, knocking over trees, carts and guards. It creates a scene of absolute devastation that you, the hero, are entirely responsible for. "I saved the village," you declare, standing next to a flattened house where the dragon skidded to a halt. Furthermore, as Dragonrend is the only shout that effectively taunts a dragon. Other enemies might ignore you if you're sneaking, but a dragon hit by Dragonrend knows exactly who did it. You cannot stealth archer a dragon with this shout. It is a declaration of war. It pulls aggro immediately because you are the source of their pain. This is useful for tanking in a group scenario, like when fighting alongside Delphine or Esbern, ensuring the dragon focuses on you, the one with the armour, rather than the squishy NPCs. It is also the key to the final battle in Sovngarde. Alduin, the World Eater, cannot be damaged until he is affected by Dragonrend. This is the game telling you that physical damage means nothing to the end of times. You cannot cut the apocalypse with a sword. You must first force the apocalypse to play by the rules of reality. You must make Alduin real before you can kill him. It is a profound metaphysical statement wrapped in a boss fight mechanic. But once the dragon is dead, once the soul is absorbed and the bones are looted, you are left standing there. The adrenaline fades, the shout's cooldown ticks away. You have forced the dragon to accept its timeline is finite. But what about yours? You are the Dragonborn. You have the soul of a Dover in a mortal body. You're a living contradiction. You have mastered space with Whirlwind Sprint. You have mastered matter with Unrelenting Force. And you have mastered the mind of the immortal with Dragonrend. But there is one final frontier, the one thing that binds both mortals and dragons alike. The one thing that flows in only one direction, usually. What if you could step outside of the flow? What if, instead of forcing the dragon to understand death, you could force the world to wait for you? What if you could see the arrow flying toward your face and simply pluck it out of the air? So, you have forced a dragon to land by shouting mortality at it. You have mind ore at the speed of light with elemental fury. But sometimes, the threat isn't a lumbering dragon or a stationary rock. Sometimes, the threat is a single ebony arrow fired by a Draugr Deathlord from across a dark crypt, currently whistling toward your left eye socket at 300 feet per second. In the standard flow of time, you are dead. You haven't leveled your health enough, you forgot to recast your flesh spell and your last save was 20 minutes ago. But you are the Dragonborn. You don't have to accept the present moment as it is. You can stretch it, you can break it. You can shout at the clock until it submits. Slow time, Tid Clo Ul, time, sand, eternity. This shout is the closest Skyrim gets to the Matrix. When you utter the words, the world turns grey and warps. The ambient sound drops an octave, becoming a low, demonic groaning. The arrow that was a blur becomes a sluggish, drifting splinter. The bandit's sword swing, which was terrifyingly fast a moment ago, is now moving through invisible molasses. You, however, are largely unaffected. You move faster than the world. You step to the side. The arrow drifts harmlessly past your ear. You walk around the bandit, examine his armour, maybe pick his pocket, and then, casually, almost apologetically, stab him in the back. The core in-game fact that makes slow time arguably the most powerful shout for God mode builds is the cooldown to duration ratio. With all three words unlocked, Tid Clo Ul slows time to 10% of its normal speed for 16 seconds of real time. But because time is slowed, Those 16 seconds feel like an eternity in-game. Here is the kicker. If you stack Shout cooldown reduction, wearing an Amulet of Talos, receiving the Blessing of Talos, and perhaps using the Fortify Restoration glitch to enhance your amulet's power, you can reduce the cooldown of the shout to be shorter than the duration of the shout itself. This results in perma time stop. You can shout, slow the world, kill a room full of enemies, loot their bodies, arrange them in funny poses, and then shout again before time even resumes. You effectively exist in a frozen world. To an outside observer, if any were left alive, the Dragonborn would appear as a blur of violence, instantly massacring an entire fort in the blink of an eye. You become a speedster, speed blitzing the entire province. But let's talk about the specific arrow-catching fantasy. While the game engine doesn't have a dedicated pluck arrow button, slow time combined with the telekinesis spell allows for one of the coolest unscripted moments possible in the Elder Scrolls engine. If you cast slow time as an arrow approaches, and then cast telekinesis, you can actually grab the projectile mid-flight. It requires precise timing and a bit of luck with the physics engine, but when it works, you feel like a deity. You catch the arrow that was meant to kill you, and then fire it back. Even without the spell, simply stepping out of the way of a kill cam arrow is immensely satisfying. It turns the game's jump scare traps into minor inconveniences. This shout also enables the Wall of Death strategy for mages. Projectiles like Fireball or Ice Spike travel slowly during slow time. If you have high magicka regeneration, you can cast 5, 6, maybe 10 fireballs at a single target while time is slowed. The fireballs will hang in the air, clustering together as they slowly drift toward the enemy. When the shout ends and time snaps back to normal, all 10 fireballs impact simultaneously. The resulting damage spike is instantaneous and catastrophic. It deletes bosses, it crashes the game on older consoles, it is beautiful. Lore-wise, this shout is a direct manifestation of your nature as a shard of Akatosh. Akatosh is the dragon god of time. Dragons are, in essence, biological time machines, immortal, unchanging, existing outside the normal flow of Mundus. When you shout Teed, you are asserting your divine heritage. You are commanding the dragon part of your soul to override the born part. You're telling the universe that your time is more important than global time. There is an obscure interaction with falling damage that speedrunners love. While falling is generally governed by gravity, slow time messes with the calculation of velocity upon impact. If you shout Teed right before hitting the ground, the game sometimes miscalculates your terminal velocity because the checks for speed happen less frequently during the slowdown. You can survive falls that should have shattered your legs. It's unreliable, but when it works, it feels like a superhero landing. Fans have long debated the nature of the grey world visual effect. Does slow time actually transport the Dragonborn slightly into the Dreams Leave, or a pocket realm of oblivion? The grey tint is similar to the Become Ethereal effect and the vision of Detect Dead. This suggests that to move faster than time is to flirt with the void. You are stepping out of the colour of life, the vibrant moving reality, and into the static grey stillness of the spaces between moments. It is a lonely place. The sound design reinforces this. The muffled, heartbeat-like thumping implies you're isolated in your own temporal bubble. One of the most practical uses for this shout is actually thievery. Trying to pick a master-level lock in a busy room? Slow time. The guards patrol paths slow to a crawl. You have ample time to fiddle with the tumblers before anyone turns around. Trying to pickpocket a moving target? Slow time. They are basically statues. It turns the frantic, stealth-based anxiety of the Thieves Guild questline into a leisurely stroll. You are the invisible man simply because no one else is fast enough to see you. However, there is a glitchy downside. Scripted events often break during slow time. If a character is supposed to open a door or trigger a conversation, they will do so in slow motion. This can lead to awkward moments where you're waiting for an NPC to finish a sentence that now takes 3 minutes to say. I am sworn to carry your burdens. It turns dramatic exposition into a test of patience. It reminds you that the game is a collection of scripts and you are running faster than the director intended. There is also the double slow danger. The block perk, Quick Reflexes, slows time when you block a power attack. If you activate slow time while Quick Reflexes is active, the effects can stack or conflict, sometimes causing the game to freeze entirely or slowing time to such a degree, 1% speed, that you're effectively stuck in a photograph. You have slowed time so much you have stopped the game. You have to wait for the buff to wear off, which, in 1% speed, could take an hour of real time. You have trapped yourself in a moment forever, a fitting, ironic punishment for a time meddler. But the true mastery of slow time is in the anime duel. Fighting the Ebony Warrior or a high-level boss becomes a cinematic masterpiece. They swing, you duck under the blade in slow motion, you slash their legs as you slide past, you stand up, sheath your weapon, and turn your back. Time resumes, they collapse. It is the ultimate cool guys don't look at explosions maneuver. We should also mention the potion chugging utility. In the base game, potion effects tick down in real-time seconds. However, during slow time the game clock is slowed. This means a potion that lasts for 60 seconds of game time effectively lasts for minutes of your experience time while the shout is active. You get more actions per second of potion duration. It stretches your resources. A single, fortify one-handed potion can last for an entire dungeon clear if you keep the time dilated. So, you have become a master of the clock. You can catch arrows, dodge lightning, and live between the ticks of a second. You are a solitary god in a frozen world. But sometimes being a solitary god is lonely. Sometimes, and despite all your time-bending power, you're overwhelmed by numbers, you're surrounded, you're out of magicka, you're out of stamina, and you realise that even a time god needs a friend. But not just any friend. You don't want a cowardly bard or a housecarl who complains about burdens. You want a legend. You want someone who has already died and gone to the halls of the gods, someone who eats dragons for breakfast. You need to reach across the veil of life and death and pull a hero out of heaven to fight in a muddy cave for you. We have manipulated time to catch arrows and dodge death by stepping between seconds. But even a time-bending demigod gets lonely. And let's face it, sometimes you don't want to be the one taking the hits. Sometimes you want to outsource the danger. You've just returned from Sovngarde, the Nordic afterlife, having defeated Alduin and saved existence itself. As a parting gift, the legendary tongue Tsun grants you a shout that allows you to call upon the heroes of old. Call of Valor, Hunkalzor, hero, champion, legend. On paper, this sounds like the ultimate summon. You are bringing forth Gormleth Golden Hilt, Feldir the Old, or Hakon One-Eye, the three legendary warriors who originally banished Alduin in the Merethic era. These are the figures of myth, the people whose names are carved into the very stones of Skyrim. You expect them to be unstoppable avatars of divine wrath, descending from the heavens to smite your enemies with the fury of Shor himself. And they are. Okay. They deal decent damage, they shout occasionally, and they look very shiny in their spectral golden glow. But the true, cynical utility of Call of Valor isn't their combat prowess. It isn't their ability to tank a dragon or flank a bandit chief. No, the single most practical use for a legendary hero of Sovngarde is to walk into a hallway full of pressure plates so you don't have to. We have all been there. You are deep in a Dwemer ruin, perhaps Raldpthar or Mzincha left. The hallway ahead is a nightmare of spinning blades, flamethrowers and tripwires. Your follower, Lydia or Serana, is already kneeling on the ground, recovering from the last trap they blundered into. You're low on health potions, you need to cross the murder hallway to pull a lever. You could use Whirlwind Sprint and risk timing it wrong. You could use Become Ethereal and risk it wearing off halfway through. Or you could shout Hunkalzor. Gormleth appears in a flash of golden light, sword raised, screaming for Skyrim or victory or Sovngarde. She charges forward with the reckless abandon of a true Nord. Click. She steps on the first pressure plate. A spiked gate slams into her face. She staggers but keeps running. Snap. She trips a wire. Poison darts rain down on her ghostly armour. Whir! The spinning blades extend from the walls, slicing through her spectral form. She dies, again, dissipating into purple mist. But in her brief, violent journey down the hall, she triggered every single trap. The blades are resetting. The poison is spent. The pressure plates are stuck in the down position for a few seconds. You walk calmly down the centre of the hallway, stepping over the spot where a legend of history just sacrificed her afterlife for your convenience and pull the lever. This is the core in-game fact that changes how you view summoning. The heroes of Sovngarde are disposable physics objects with hitboxes. Unlike your permanent followers, who you might feel a vague sense of guilt about hurting, or who are essential and just complain, the summoned heroes are temporary. They are meant to leave. Using them as minesweepers is arguably the most efficient way to clear a dungeon's hazards. It turns a deadly puzzle into a spectator sport. The obscure lore implications here are staggering. Consider what you're actually doing. You're ripping a soul out of the Hall of Valor, where they're presumably drinking mead, wrestling bears and listening to Sun sing ballads, and dragging them back to the mortal plane. And for what? To fight another dragon? To save the world again? No, to catch a poison dart with their face because you didn't want to level your sneak skill. This touches on a darker interpretation of the shout. The words, Hunkal Zur command a spirit to serve. In the lore, necromancy is the act of binding a soul against its will, or animating a body without one. Call of Valor is technically distinct because it is a call, a request for aid that the hero answers willingly due to the bond of the dragon blood. But does Gormley know she's being summoned just to trigger a swinging blade trap? When she yells, "I fight for the Dragonborn!" Does she realise fighting involves walking into a magically sealed door repeatedly until it glitches open? There is a fascinating community debate about which hero is the best trap dummy. Gormleth is aggressive. She rushes enemies and traps alike, making her the best for clearing a path quickly. Kyne is a bit more defensive, often blocking with his shield, which ironically makes him slower and less effective at triggering all the traps in a sequence. Feldir the Old, the mage of the group, tends to hang back and cast spells, making him useless for this specific cruel purpose. He'll just stand next to you, watching the traps, waiting for an enemy to appear. "Go on, Feldir," you whisper. "Walk into the fire." He refuses. Smart man, beyond trap disposal. Call of Valor has a unique advantage over standard conjuration spells. It costs no magicka. This is huge for warrior builds or pure Dragonborn roleplays who refuse to dabble in elven magic. You get a high-level summon without investing a single point in the conjuration tree. Furthermore, because it is a shout and not a spell, it doesn't count toward your summon limit in some versions of the game, though usually it replaces your current summon. This allows a warrior to have a magical backup instantly, even while silenced or out of magicka. However, the cooldown is the elephant in the room. Call of Valor has one of the longest cooldowns in the game, 180 seconds for the full 3 words, that's 3 minutes. In a fast-paced dungeon, 3 minutes is an eternity. This reinforces the trap trigger utility. You use it once to clear the big puzzle room, and by the time you reach the boss, it might be ready again. It forces you to treat the summon as a strategic resource, a super move, rather than a spammable spell like Conjure Flame Atronak. There is also the meat shield aspect during boss fights. The heroes of Sovngarde scale with you to a degree, but they aren't unkillable. Against a legendary dragon or Kastag, they will die. Fast. But that's the point. Every bite the dragon takes out of Kyne is a bite it didn't take out of you. Every blast of frost breath Feldir absorbs is damage you didn't take. They are distractions. They are golden, shouting decoys, and they do shout. This is a critical distinction. Unlike a Dremora lord who just swings a greatsword and screams about smelliness, the Sovngarde heroes use the voice. Gormley uses Dragonrend sometimes, Feldir uses Frost Breath, and Kyne uses Disarm. This adds a layer of chaos to the fight. Having an ally who can disarm a Draugr Deathlord is invaluable. Suddenly the boss drops his ebony greatsword and has to punch you. The fight becomes trivial. You and Kyne gang up on the unarmed undead lord, bullying him into submission. It's a moment of camaraderie that almost makes up for the time you made Kyne walk into a bear trap. But be warned, their shouts are not precise. A hero's frost breath can hit you if you are in the way. There is no friendly fire toggle for ancient Nord legends. They come from a time when aiming was apparently optional. You might find yourself frozen solid by your own summoned ancestor, which is a very specific kind of family drama. Visually, the shout is spectacular. The portal to Sovngarde opens, a tear in reality shimmering with the same aurora effect seen in the afterlife. The hero steps out fully formed, glowing with an inner light that illuminates dark dungeons better than a torch. It's a reminder of your divine connection. You aren't just a powerful mortal, you are the bridge between Mundus and Ethereus. There is a niche use for this shout in pacifist runs, again with the caveat that you aren't killing, your ghost friend is. If you need to clear a room but refuse to draw a blade, Gormleth is happy to do the wet work for you. You can stand back, heal her with Heal Other, if you have the magicka, and let her rack up the kill count. You keep your hands clean, she gets to relive the glory days. Everyone wins, except the bandits. One of the funniest interactions occurs if you use this shout inside the Hall of Valor itself, before defeating Alduin, though you don't have the shout then, or via console commands. If you summon Gormleth while Gormleth is sitting at the table eating, the game engine handles it surprisingly well. You get a combat Gormleth and an NPC Gormleth. It creates a paradox. A warrior so legendary, she can be in two places at once, eating a chicken leg and fighting a dragon. But let's return to the disrespect. There is something deeply funny about the Dragonborn's pragmatism. You are the saviour of the world, yet you treat the sacred dead like tools. It fits the chaotic neutral energy of most players. Thank you for your service, Haken. Now, please stand on that rune trap so I can loot this chest. It deconstructs the reverence of the setting. It reminds us that in a video game, mechanics always trump lore. A hero is only as valuable as their hitbox. Ultimately, Call of Valor is the shout of the lonely, the lazy, and the tactically cruel. It gives you a friend when you need one, and a victim when you need that too. It bridges the gap between the living and the dead, mostly so the living can get a few extra gold pieces from a trapped chest. But summoning a single hero is a precise controlled act. It's a scalpel. Gormleth appears, fights, and leaves. It's clean. Sometimes, however, you don't want clean. Sometimes you don't want a single hero. Sometimes you want to burn the whole world down. You want to summon something so chaotic, so uncontrollable, and so violently indiscriminate that it kills your enemies, your friends, the town guards, and possibly your own horse. You want to call the storm, and not just any storm, a storm that doesn't know when to stop. We move from the precision of summoning a single heroic ghost to trigger a trap, to the absolute unmitigated disaster of summoning the weather itself. If Clear Skies is the Dragonborn playing the role of a benevolent diplomat, asking the heavens to please be nice, then Stormcall is the Dragonborn flipping the table, setting the room on fire and screaming at the clouds until they scream back. Strunba Ko, storm, wrath, lightning. This shout is the nuclear option. It is the I give up on tactics button. It is the single most destructive, visually impressive, and strategically catastrophic ability in the entire game. And it is also the reason why you are currently banned from entering the City of Solitude. Here is the core in-game fact that every player learns exactly once. Usually the hard way. Stormcall does not distinguish between friend and foe. The description in the menu is vague. A shout to the skies, a cry to the clouds that awakens the destructive force of Skyrim's lightning. It sounds epic. You imagine channeling the power of Thor, smiting your enemies with pinpoint accuracy while your allies cheer you on. So, you decide to test it out. A dragon attacks Riverwood. The villagers, Alvor the smith, Faendal the archer, maybe a chicken or two, rush out to help. You, the hero, stand in the centre of the street, throw your head back and shout Strunba Ko. The sky turns an apocalyptic shade of black. The rain begins to fall, heavy and torrential. Thunder shakes your controller. And then, the lightning starts. Crack. A bolt hits the dragon. Good. Crack. A bolt hits a bandit. Great. Crack. A bolt hits Alva. Wait. Crack. A bolt hits the chicken. Oh no. Crack. A bolt hits a Whiterun guard. Stop. Within 30 seconds, the dragon is dead. But so is the blacksmith. So is the bard. So is the cow. And you? You're standing in the rain with a 5,000 gold bounty on your head, surrounded by the charred corpses of the people you were trying to save. The survivors are drawing their weapons, their eyes red with aggression, because you just committed a localized war crime. You haven't saved the village, you've executed it. This mechanic makes Stormcall a chaotic liability in any populated area. The game engine selects targets based on a radius around the player. It prioritizes hostile actors, yes. But once the hostiles are dead, or if the random number generator of the lightning decides to be spicy, it targets neutrals, it targets livestock, it targets your own follower. If you bring Lydia into a Stormcall zone, she will be struck by lightning repeatedly. Unless she's tagged as an essential NPC, she will die. If she's essential, she will drop to one knee, crawl around in the mud, get up, get struck by lightning again, and repeat the cycle until the shout ends. It is a purgatory of electricity. The cooldown of this shout reinforces its status as a forbidden technique. It has the longest recharge time of any shout in the game, a staggering 600 seconds for all 3 words. That is 10 minutes of real-world time, 10 minutes where you cannot shout again. You get 10 minutes where you have to live with the silence and the consequences of your actions. This isn't a combat ability you weave into a rotation, it is an event. You use it, and then the game forces you to think about what you've done while you wait for your voice to return. Lore-wise, this shout represents the ancient Nord view of the voice as a weapon of total domination. The words strun, storm, bar, wrath, and Q, lightning, are guttural and harsh. Unlike the meditative way of the voice taught by the Greybeards, which focuses on worship and contemplation, Stormcall feels like something from the Dragon War era. It feels like something a dragon priest would use to subjugate a rebellion. It is indiscriminate power. It is nature weaponized without the filter of morality. There is a fascinating interaction during the Civil War questline. If you use Stormcall during the Battle for Whiterun or the Siege of Solitude, the game engine struggles to keep up. There are dozens of soldiers on screen, Imperials and Stormcloaks fighting in the streets. If you summon the storm, the lightning starts picking them off at random. It turns the battle into a lottery of death. You might accidentally kill General Tullius, or knock him down since he's essential, or wipe out your own squad of Stormcloak brothers. The soldiers will scream friendly fire, but the lightning doesn't care. It creates a scene of absolute bedlam that fits the narrative of a chaotic, magic-fueled war perfectly, even if it tanks your reputation. Obscure lore hidden in the game files suggests that Stormcall was originally intended to be even more powerful, perhaps affecting the weather of the entire region rather than just the immediate cell. In the final game, the effect is localized, but the skybox change is global for you. If you're on the throat of the world and look down while the shout is active, you can see the storm clouds gathering below. It gives you a sense of scale that few other abilities provide. You aren't just casting a spell, you're changing the atmospheric pressure of the province. However, there is one place where Stormcall shines: Skulldarfen. Skulldarfen is the ancient temple you visit right before going to Sovngarde. It is populated exclusively by high-level Draugr and dragons. There are no civilians, there are no guards to arrest you. There are no chickens to report you for animal cruelty. Here you can unleash the full 3-word shout without guilt. Imagine the scene. You're on the rooftops of the temple. 2 ancient dragons are circling. A dozen Draugr deathlords are shouting at you. You shout Strunba Ko. The lightning starts falling like rain. It hits the dragons in mid-air, grounding them. It blasts the Draugr off the bridges. It is arguably the most power fantasy moment the game offers. For those few minutes, you are truly the heir to Akatosh, commanding the sky to clear your path to the afterlife. It is glorious, and because there are no witnesses, it is legal. But we must address the bounty spiral. If you accidentally trigger Stormcall in a hold capital, the bounty notifications start stacking up so fast they obscure your vision. 40 bounty added to Whiterun, assault. 1,000 bounty added to Whiterun, murder. 40 bounty added, 1,000 bounty added, the guards try to arrest you. You have committed crimes against Skyrim and her people. Crack. Lightning strikes the guard. He dies. 1,000 bounty added to Whiterun, murder. Another guard runs up. Stop right there. Crack. It becomes a slapstick comedy of errors. You can't surrender because the weapon you're using is the sky itself, and you can't sheathe the sky. You have to run away or use clear skies to cancel the effect. A pro tip many forget: clear skies override Stormcall. If you don't cancel it, you're forced to massacre the entire town guard simply by existing near them. This shout also reveals a limitation of the game's stealth mechanics. You cannot stealthily summon a thunderstorm. Even if you are hidden when you shout, perhaps using quiet casting perk from the illusion tree, once the lightning starts hitting people, the entire area enters combat mode. The enemies know the lightning is coming from you. The AI interprets being struck by lightning as the Dragonborn hit me. There is no must have been the wind when the wind is literally killing them. It ruins any attempt at a subtle playthrough. Visually, the shout is stunning, especially at night. The flashes of light illuminate the landscape in harsh, monochrome bursts. The shadows stretch and distort. The rain effect makes surfaces look slick and wet. It is a graphical showcase, particularly in the special edition or with mods, but the sound design is what sells it. The thunder isn't just a sound effect, it's a bass drop. It rumbles in your subwoofer. It feels dangerous. There is also the Vampire Lord synergy. If you transform into a Vampire Lord, you lose access to your shouts, unless you shout before you transform. Using Stormcall and then immediately morphing into a Vampire Lord creates a terrifying synergy. You are a floating monster draining life with blood magic, while the sky rains lightning around you. It creates the ultimate end boss aesthetic. You become the villain of the story, a creature of darkness and storm that the people of Skyrim tell ghost stories about. Conversely, for the paladin or lawful good roleplayer, Stormcall is a test of restraint. You have the power to level a city block, but you must choose not to use it. You must rely on your sword and shield, keeping the storm locked away in your throat, C only to be released when the world is empty of innocence. It adds a layer of moral complexity to the gameplay. Power is not just about what you can do, it's about what you choose not to do. But let's be honest, sometimes you save the game. You look at Nazim walking through the Cloud District, asking if you get there very often. You look at Heimska screaming about Talos in the square. You look at the guards who keep mocking your sweet roll situation, and you think, you know what, it's time for a little weather. You shout, you watch the chaos, you giggle, and then, once the bounty hits 10,000 gold and the Jarl is sending elite troops after you, you reload your save. It is the ultimate catharsis. The unpredictability is the charm. Other shouts are tools. Stormcall is a gamble. Will the lightning hit the dragon priest? Or will it hit the urn next to him? Will it save you? Or will it kill your favourite horse? It forces you to improvise. It turns the battlefield into a hazard zone where no one is safe, not even you. So, you have mastered the storm. You have learned that sometimes the best offence is an indiscriminate natural disaster. You have cleared the skies of enemies and friends. But destruction is often messy. It leaves bodies, it leaves ashes, and sometimes you look at those bodies, specifically the really big ones, and think, it's a shame to let that go to waste. What if you could take the raw power of a shout and use it not to destroy, but to recruit? Not a hero from Sovngarde, and not a storm from the heavens. What if you could look at a dead giant or a fallen bandit chief and simply rip the soul right out of them? What if you could turn the recently deceased into a permanent groaning servant? We are leaving the realm of elemental destruction and entering the dark, forbidden arts of necromancy. But we aren't using spells. We are using a shout so evil it was taught to us by a vampire lord in a plane of oblivion. We leave the chaotic lightning storms and the charred remains of innocent chickens behind, descending from the mountaintops into a realm that feels much colder, much darker, and significantly more purple. We're talking about the Soul Cairn, that lovely vacation spot in Oblivion, where the sky's always bruised and the ground is made of unhappy faces. It is here, amidst the husks of trapped spirits, that you meet Durnevir, the undead dragon. He is polite, tragic, and eager to teach you a shout that essentially weaponizes the concept of spiritual violation. Soul Tear, Riva Zul, Essence, Tear, Zombie. To the uninitiated, necromancy in Skyrim is a tedious affair. You have to level up your conjuration skill, buy expensive spell tomes like Reanimate Corpse or Dead Thrall, and then awkwardly aim a spell at a dead body while dodging arrows. It's slow, it costs magicka, it's messy. Solitaire skips the magical study phase entirely and goes straight to the ripping the soul out of the body phase. Here is the core in-game fact that makes this shout a staple for the darker Dragonborn. Soul Tear deals a massive 300 points of damage instantly. If that damage kills the target, it automatically fills a soul gem in your inventory and reanimates the corpse to fight for you for 60 seconds. Let that sink in. It is a triple threat ability. It is a nuke, a soul trap, and a summon, all packed into 3 words. But the true beauty and the true horror of Soul Tear lies in its application against the heavyweights of Skyrim, the giants. We have all fought giants. They are tanky, they hit like freight trains, and they have a disturbing amount of health. Standard reanimation spells often fail on them because of level caps or too powerful restrictions, until you reach master level conjuration. Soul Tear does not care about your conjuration level. It does not care about your magicka pool. If the giant is low on health, or if you are playing on a lower difficulty where 300 damage is lethal, you simply shout Riva Zul. The giant collapses, its soul is sucked into your black soul gem, and then, groaning, glowing with a purple aura, it stands back up. You now have a pet giant. This creates the ultimate meat shield. A reanimated giant retains its massive health pool and its club attacks. It will turn on its former mammoths, smashing them into the ground. It will tank Dragonfire. It will distract an entire bandit camp while you loot the chest, and because the shout's cooldown is relatively short, 90 seconds for all 3 words, you can keep this cycle going. The moment your giant turns to an ash pile, you just find another victim. It turns the Dragonborn into a wandering factory of undead monstrosities. The obscure lore behind this shout is fascinating because of who teaches it to you. Durnavir is a dragon who bargained with the ideal masters, the mysterious entities who rule the soul cairn, in exchange for power. He was tricked and bound to the cairn eternally. When he teaches you Soul Tear, he is teaching you the specific magic of the ideal masters. You are using the same dark tonal architecture that binds souls to oblivion. Unlike standard necromancy, which manipulates the body, where Soul Tear cuts the essence, directly. It implies a level of violence that goes beyond physical death. You are hurting the soul itself. This leads to some grim efficiency for enchanters. Obtaining filled Grand Soul Gems or Black Soul Gems is usually a chore. You have to cast Soul Trap, kill the target within the time limit, and hope you have the right gem. Soul Tear automates this. You see a bandit chief? Soul Tear, he dies. You get a Black Soul. He stands up to kill his friends. It is the most efficient farming tool in the game. You are harvesting souls like a farmer harvesting wheat, with about as much emotional attachment. However, there is a distinct ash pile mechanic to consider. Unlike the master-level spell Dead Thrall, which leaves the body intact after the spell ends, allowing you to rethrall it infinitely, Soul Tear functions like standard reanimation. When the 60 seconds are up, or if the zombie is killed, the body disintegrates into a pile of glowing ash. This means your pet giant is a temporary rental. You cannot keep him forever. This adds a tactical layer. You have to use the giant while he lasts. You have a limited window of supreme power before your tank literally crumbles to dust. There is also a hidden synergy with the Ritual Stone. The Ritual Stone power allows you to reanimate all corpses around you once per day. If you use Soul Tear to create a zombie, and that zombie dies, you can then use the Ritual Stone, interacting with the Ethereal Crown to reset the power, to bring it back again, as bypassing the Ashpile mechanic if timed correctly, or if using specific mods/patches. But in vanilla Skyrim, Soul Tear is the finisher. It is the last thing that happens to an enemy before they are erased from the world. From a role-playing perspective, this shout is arguably the most evil act the Dragonborn can commit. You aren't just killing Nazim, you're enslaving his corpse to carry your burdens, ironically, and stealing his soul for an enchantment. It fits perfectly with a Vampire Lord build. Imagine transforming into a Vampire Lord, summoning a gargoyle, and then using Soul Tear to add a third minion to your squad. You become a wandering army of darkness. Visually, the shout is distinct from others. It has a purple necrotic tint to the sound wave. The impact sound is wet and heavy like a cleaver hitting meat. And the reanimation effect is instant. No slow rising animation. The body snaps up, ready to kill. It's jarring. It emphasizes the tear part of the name. You have ripped them back into service. The shout also bypasses the projectile issue of spells. Reanimate Corpse is a targeted spell. If you miss the body, nothing happens. Soul Tear is a shout. It has a cone of effect, or a direct path. You don't have to be precise. You just have to scream in the general direction of the dying enemy. This makes it viable in chaotic melees where aiming a delicate spell is impossible. But let's talk about the kill steal frustration. If your follower deals the killing blow before the shout hits, or if the shout hits but doesn't kill the target, leaving them with 1 hit point, the effect fails. The target must die from the shout damage to trigger the soul trap and reanimation instantly. This leads to a funny gameplay loop where you're frantically trying to lower an enemy's health just enough without killing them, shouting, "Don't hit him yet, Serana," while she blasts ice spikes everywhere. It turns combat into a delicate surgery where the scalpel is a magical scream. There is a specific interaction with dragons. You cannot use Soul Tear to reanimate a dragon, obviously. Their souls are absorbed by you automatically and their bones are too heavy. But you can use the damage. 300 damage is a significant chunk of a dragon's health bar. It's a great execute move. Instead of hacking at the dragon's legs, you shout Riva Zul. The dragon dies, you absorb its soul via the Dragonborn mechanic, and you feel incredibly powerful. You didn't just slay the beast, you tore it apart with your voice. For the pacifist, well, this shout is useless, but for the illusionist or manipulator build, it's gold. You can stand in the shadows, let enemies fight each other, and then step in at the last second to claim the winner as your prize. You are the arbiter of death. One of the most satisfying uses is against the Ebony Warrior. This guy reflects damage. He's a nightmare. But shouts are often exempt from standard reflection mechanics, depending on the patch. Hitting him with Soul Tear creates a massive dent in his health pool without necessarily bouncing back to kill you. And if you manage to kill him with it, the irony, the greatest warrior in Tamriel reduced to a shambling zombie for 60 seconds. He wanted a glorious death in Sovngarde. You gave him a minute of servitude as a mindless thrall. The shout also works on animals. Reanimating a snowy saber cat or a cave bear is terrifyingly effective. They are fast, they deal high damage, and they stagger enemies. A pet bear is often better than a pet bandit because the AI for animals is more aggressive. They don't try to block or flank, they just maul, but there is a melancholy to it. Durnafir teaches you this shout because he is lonely. He wants you to call his name in Tamriel so he can fly again. Soul Tear is the inverse of that bond. It forces a connection where none exists. It binds the victim to you without their consent. It is a perversion of the bond you share with Durnafir. Every time you use it, you are proving that the ideal masters were right. Power is worth any price, even the sanctity of the soul. So you have mastered the art of the instant zombie. You have turned giants into bodyguards and filled your inventory with black soul gems. You have ripped the essence from your enemies and forced their corpses to dance for you. But necromancy is messy. It leaves piles of ash. It smells. And honestly, sometimes you don't want a zombie. Sometimes you don't even want to fight. You just want to watch the most powerful warrior in the room look down at his hands, realize he's holding nothing but air, and panic. What if, instead of ripping out their soul, you just ripped the weapon out of their hands? What if you could turn a terrifying Draugr Deathlord, wielding an ebony greatsword that can two-shot you, into a harmless, confused mummy trying to punch you with withered fists? Let's put away the soul gems and look at a shout that creates the most awkward moments in Skyrim's combat history. We leave behind the gruesome purple-tinted necromancy of Soul Tear, where we turned our enemies into ash piles and harvested their souls like crops. That was dark. That was heavy. Sometimes you don't want to violate the sanctity of life and death. Sometimes you just want to embarrass someone. You want to take the most terrifying ancient undead warrior in the room, a Draugr Deathlord who has been sleeping for 3,000 years with his ebony greatsword, and turn him into a confused flailing boxer. Enter Disarm, Zunhalvik, weapon, hand, defeat. To the uninitiated, this shout seems situational. Why disarm an enemy when you could just kill them? But anyone who has played on Master or Legendary difficulty knows the terror of the Ebony Deathlord. You know the one. Oh, he's standing at the end of a long hallway in Volskig or Ingol Barrow. He draws a bow that hits like a siege weapon. One arrow takes 80% of your health, 2 arrows send you back to the loading screen. You can't get close enough to hit him without turning into a pincushion. This is where Disarm shines. You peek around the corner, you shout Zunhalvik. The effect is instantaneous and arguably the most satisfying sound in the game. Clang, clatter, thud. The ebony bow, a weapon of the legendary craftsmanship worth thousands of gold, flies out of his hands and skitters across the stone floor. The Deathlord pauses. The AI takes a moment to process this new reality. He looks at his empty hands, he looks at you, and then, with no other options, he raises his withered, mummified fists and charges. Here is the core in-game fact that changes the entire dynamic of the dungeon. High-level enemies like Deathlords often do not have backup weapons. When you strip them of their primary weapon, they are forced into unarmed combat mode. And let me tell you, a Draugr's right hook is significantly less terrifying than an ebony greatsword. You have effectively neutered the boss. The fight transforms from a desperate struggle for survival into a bullying session where you and your follower beat up an elderly zombie who can't fight back. However, there is a brutal catch, a mechanical limitation that has caused more frustration than perhaps any other shout in the game. Disarm has a level cap. The shout only affects enemies up to level 30 with all 3 words. In the base game, many Draugr Deathlords and high-level bandits scale well beyond level 30. This means that as you get stronger, the shout actually becomes weaker in utility. You shout at a level 40 Deathlord, and he just stares at you, sword firmly in hand, and laughs in ancient Nord. The shout resists, it fails. This has led to a widely held belief that Disarm is useless in the late game. but the clever Dragonborn knows that this level cap applies to enemies, not weapons. If you use the shout on a group of mid-level bandits or Silverhand warriors, it works perfectly. It turns a crowded room into a scavenger hunt for their own gear. You can watch them scramble, running toward the weapon racks to find a replacement, or trying to punch your shield. It disrupts their formation. It breaks the tank and spank rhythm of combat. Lore-wise, the words Zun, weapon, Hal, hand, and Vik, defeat, suggest a very specific form of tonal manipulation. You aren't just using telekinesis to pull the weapon, you're attacking the concept of their grip. You are shouting defeat into their hands. The universe hears you and decides, okay, he's holding nothing now. It aligns with the Nord reverence for martial prowess. To be disarmed is to be defeated. It is a shout of dominance stripping a warrior of their identity. This leads to a popular fan theory regarding the Draga themselves. Why do they use disarm on you? If you have played Skyrim for any length of time, you have experienced this trauma. You are fighting a Deathlord. He shouts. Suddenly, your screen flashes red, and your character's hands are empty. Where is my sword? You panic. Where is my Dawnbreaker? You look at the floor. It's dark. There is clutter everywhere. Bones, cups, plates. Your sword is gone. Maybe it clipped through the floor. Maybe it flew behind a shelf. Maybe it fell into a bottomless pit. The panic is real. The AI doesn't have a loot function for your dropped weapon, usually, but the physics engine does. Fans theorize that the Draugr use this shout specifically because they know how much Nords value their steel. It is a psychological attack. They are trying to make you lose your soul as a warrior. From a tactical standpoint, using disarm requires you to be a bit of a chaotic element. When the weapon flies, you have to be ready to grab it. If you are fast enough, you can steal their weapon before they pick it up. Imagine the insult. You shout the axe out of a bandit chief's hand, let us snatch it out of the air or off the ground, and then kill him with his own weapon. It is the ultimate stop hitting yourself move. There is also the pacifist utility we keep returning to. If you are trying to complete the Thieves Guild questline without killing anyone, disarm is your best friend. A guard without a sword is just a guy in armor yelling at you. He can't kill you quickly. You can disarm him, calm him with a spell, or just run past while he's looking for his blade. It neutralizes the threat without ending the life. Visually, the shout is subtle, a red rippling wave similar to Unrelenting Force but sharper. The sound design is distinct, a high-pitched sheen sound like metal being drawn from a scabbard, followed by the impact. It cuts through the noise of battle. You know exactly when it lands. But let's talk about the lost weapon phenomenon again, because it is the single biggest reason players stop using this shout, or reload saves when hit by it. The physics engine in Skyrim is enthusiastic. When a weapon is disarmed, it retains the velocity of the swing or the shout. Sometimes, a sword will fly across the room at max speed, bounce off 3 walls, and land on top of a bookshelf you can't reach. If that was your unique, one-of-a-kind weapon, like Chillrend, it's gone. You have to reload. This creates a metagame fear. You're terrified of using the shout because you know how annoying it is to happen to you. Interestingly, disarm works on bows and staves, but not on bound weapons, summoned magic swords. This makes sense lore-wise. You can't knock a magical construct out of a hand that summoned it. It also doesn't work on creatures, giants, trolls, dragons, because their weapons are their limbs. You can't shout a giant's arm off, sadly. There is a niche synergy with the telekinesis spell. If you disarm an enemy, their weapon becomes a physics object. You can immediately use telekinesis to pull it to you from a distance. It's the Jedi fantasy. Shout the gun, sword, away, pull it to your hand, ignite the lightsaber, flame spell. It requires quick fingers, but it looks incredible in a combat montage. One of the most amusing interactions is with dual-wielding enemies like the Forsworn. Disarm only strips the main hand weapon, usually. This leaves the Forsworn Briarheart holding a single dagger in his left hand, looking confused. He loses his multi-attack combo. He becomes half a threat. It exposes the limitations of the AI's combat styles. But let's be honest, the main reason to use disarm is for the comedy. Watching a heavily armoured bandit chief who was just screaming, "I'll mount your head on my wall," suddenly drop his warhammer and start throwing frantic punches is objectively funny. It breaks the tension. It reminds you that underneath all that armour and bluster, they are just NPCs with a limited script. So, you have stripped them of their steel. You have turned warriors into brawlers. You have humiliated the Draugr lords in their own crypts. But stripping a man of his weapon is a physical act. It removes his ability to fight, but not his will to fight. He will still punch you. He will still hate you. What if you could take it a step further? What if you didn't just want to take their sword, but their loyalty? What if you wanted to look into the eyes of a dragon, a creature as old as time, and force it to bend its knee? What if you wanted to rewrite the very mind of the world around you? We are approaching the end of our journey, Dragonborn. We have shouted mountains apart, summoned storms, and ripped souls from bodies. Now we must travel to the island of Solstheim, to the summit of Apocrypha, to learn the final, most forbidden shout of all. A shout that doesn't just break bones or weapons, but breaks the will itself. We have reached the end of our climb, stepping off the boat in Raven Rock and trudging through the ash wastes of Solstheim. We have shouted bandits off cliffs, frozen time to catch arrows, and ripped the souls from giants. We have mastered the physical, the elemental, and the necromantic. But there is one final barrier to break. The most terrifying thing a Dragonborn can do isn't killing a dragon or summoning a storm. It is looking into the eyes of a sentient being, a person, a beast, or even a god, and rewriting their mind to serve you. Bend will, Golhar Dovost, Earth, Mind, Dragon. This shout is the crown jewel of the Dragonborn DLC, taught to you by Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric Prince of Knowledge and Tentacles. It is the shout that allows you to defeat Miraak, the first Dragonborn, but more importantly, it is the shout that fundamentally changes the nature of your interaction with the world. Unlike Kyne's peace, which soothes a beast, or Battle Fury, which inspires an ally, Bend Will dominates. It enslaves. It forces affection and loyalty where there was once hatred. The core in-game fact that defines this shout is its progression. The first word purges the Allmaker stones of Miraak's influence. The second word forces NPCs and creatures to become temporary allies. The third word breaks a dragon. Let's talk about the dragon riding first, because it was the box quote feature of the expansion. You shout Golhar Dov at a circling dragon. It doesn't crash like with Dragonrend. It lands, it bows its head, it waits for you to climb onto its neck. For a few glorious minutes, you are the master of the skies. You can order it to attack targets, to fly to other enemies, and to rain fire down on the world below. But let's be honest, the mechanics are a bit on rails. You can't steer the dragon like a horse. It circles, it hovers, it decides where to go. You are less of a pilot and more of a passenger with a laser pointer telling the dragon who to burn. It feels clunky. But lore-wise, it is terrifying. You are riding a shard of time. You have forced an eternal, arrogant being to become your mount. You have stripped it of its agency. The obscure lore implications of the first word, Gol, Earth, are even more unsettling. You use this word to cleanse the Allmaker stones, sacred rocks that Miraak has corrupted to enslave the minds of the Solstheim locals. By shouting Earth at the stone, you break Miraak's hold. This implies that the stones themselves have a will or a mind that can be bent. You aren't just shouting at a rock, you're shouting at the fundamental earth bones of Nirn, the laws of reality that hold the world together. You're asserting that your reality is the correct one. Miraak shouted, "Serve me." You shout, "Stop." It is a debate of reality warping proportions carried out on a geological scale. Then there is the second word, Ha, mind. This is where the morality gets murky. If you shout this at a bandit or a lurker, they stop attacking. They become your ally. They will fight to the death for you. But unlike illusion magic, which tricks the mind, the Thu'um rewrites it. The shout forces the concept of loyalty into their very being. For the duration of the shout, they love you. They are yours. When the effect wears off, they turn hostile again, likely confused and horrified by what they just did. This leads to the darkest community debate in the lore. Is Bend Will the most evil shout in the game, even worse than Soul Tear? Soul Tear kills you and uses your body. It's gruesome, but you're dead. Bend Will violates your living mind. It strips you of your free will, the one thing that makes you a person. It forces you to kill your friends for a stranger who just screamed at you. It is the ultimate tool of a tyrant. Miraak used it to build a cult. The Dragonborn uses it to, well, mostly to fast travel on dragons, but the potential for tyranny is there. There is a fascinating interaction with the animal allegiance mechanics. If you use Bend Will on a hostile animal, it functions similarly to Kyne's Peace, but with an aggressive twist. The animal doesn't just calm down, it defends you. You can turn a pack of wolves against a Spriggan. You can turn a bear against a hunter. You're weaponizing the wilderness, not through harmony, but through command. Visually, the shout is distinct. It carries a greenish, oily tint, the colour of Apocrypha, Hermaeus Mora's realm. It looks wrong. It looks like you're spitting poison into the air. The sound design is warped, echoing, as if the words are coming from somewhere else, somewhere deep underwater. It doesn't boom like Unrelenting Force. It slithers. The dragon riding mechanic also reveals a limitation of the game engine that became lore. You cannot ride a dragon into a major city, usually. The game forces you to fast travel or land outside. This has led to the theory that the city guards have some form of ancient warding, or that the dragons themselves refuse to enter such confined spaces where they are vulnerable to ballistae. But really, it's just to keep the game from crashing when a dragon tries to land on the bannered mare. However, the true power of Bend Will is demonstrated in the final boss fight with Miraak. The battle is essentially a shouting match. He tries to bend your will. You resist because you are also Dragonborn. You try to bend his dragons. He kills them to absorb their souls before you can fully turn them. It is a high-stakes game of tug-of-war with dragon souls. It highlights that at the highest level of play, the voice isn't about fire or ice, it's about authority. Whoever has the stronger will dictates reality. There is also a hidden utility for the completionist. To fully unlock the secrets of the Black Books and gain the powerful passive abilities they offer, you often need Bend Will to navigate the puzzles of Apocrypha. You have to shout at scree, eye mechanisms to open gates or extend bridges. You are literally commanding the architecture of a Daedric prince to obey you. It shows that the Thu'um transcends Mundus. It works in Oblivion too, but let's go back to the morality. When you use Bend Will on a dragon like Saratar, the one who flies you to Miraak, he speaks to you with respect. Thu'uri, he calls you, Overlord. He acknowledges your dominance. But is it respect, or is it magical enslavement? Parthenax would argue that dragons are naturally drawn to power. By proving your voice is stronger, you earned their loyalty in the only way they understand. You aren't brainwashing them. You're just speaking their language louder than they can. To a dragon, might is right. Bend Will is just the ultimate argument. Contrast this with the peaceful way of the voice. The Greybeards would be horrified by this shout. It is the antithesis of their philosophy. They believe the voice should worship the sky, not enslave it. By using Bend Will, the Dragonborn is definitively choosing the path of the Conqueror, the path of Tiber Septim, the path of Miraak. You're using the voice to shape the world to your desires. And what happens when the shout wears off? The dragon flies away. The bandit attacks you. The stone remains cleansed, permanently thankfully. It implies that the domination is temporary for living beings because their wills fight back. You can bend them, but you cannot break them forever, unless you keep shouting. It creates a cycle of dependency. To maintain your empire of mind-controlled minions, you must constantly exert your will. You must never stop shouting. There is a chilling realization when you look at the shout menu. Bend Will sits right next to Battle Fury and Become Ethereal. It is just another tool. The game doesn't punish you for using it. There is no karma meter. You can enslave a dragon, fly it to a village, burn the village, and the game just awards you XP. It trusts you to be the hero. But Bend Will gives you the power to be the villain. Ultimately, Bend Will is the final evolution of the Dragonborn. You started by pushing things, Unrelenting Force. Then you learned to change the environment, Clear Skies. Then you learned to kill, Marked for Death, Solitaire. And finally you learned to rule. You have graduated from a warrior to a general, from a hero to a king. You have the power to make the world kneel. But as you stand on the summit of Apocrypha, looking down at the defeated Miraak, melting into ink and tentacles, you have to wonder, if you have to force the world to love you, is it really love? Or are you just the loudest voice in a room full of echoes? You sheath your weapon. The dragon Saratar circles overhead, waiting for your command. You have cleared the stones. You have saved Solstheim. You have saved Skyrim. You have saved the world. And all it took was the willingness to strip the free will from everything that stood in your way. And so, we come to the end of our chronicle. We have journeyed from the snowy peaks of the throat of the world to the alien ink-stained libraries of Apocrypha. We have whispered to the wind and screamed at the storms. We have explored the mechanics, the glitches, the lore, and the dark moral questions that lie buried in the Dragonborn's throat. It's been a long road, hasn't it? Think back to that first shout. Fuss. Just a small stagger. A little push. It seems so innocent now, doesn't it? Compared to ripping souls from bodies or bending the minds of dragons, that first breath of power feels like a childhood memory. We've grown, we've changed. The Dragonborn who stumbled out of Helgen is not the same entity that now stands atop the hierarchy of Tamriel. Take a moment to let the noise of the battle fade, the clashing of steel, the roar of the dragons, the crackle of lightning. Let it all drift away into the silence of the night. You don't have to shout anymore. You don't have to fight. The bandits are gone. The dragons are grounded. The world is safe, or at least safe enough for tonight. Imagine yourself back at a campfire in the rift. The golden leaves are falling gently around you. The moons, Massa and Secunda, are high and full, casting a silver light on the water. The fire crackles, a warm, comforting sound. Not the destructive fire of a shout, but the gentle fire of home. You are warm, you are rested. The weight of your armor feels lighter. Close your eyes. Let the rhythm of the breathing take over, in and out, just like the way of the voice. Not to destroy, but to exist, to be. The world will still be there tomorrow, with all its quests and dangers, but for now, you can rest. You have earned it. Sweet dreams.